You are listening to WLRN.
We the women remember. We the women are not afraid. We the women are relentless.
We the women are a phoenix. We the women rise from the ash. We the women plant seeds and nourish gardens of nettle and dandelion.
We the women sew and weave. We the women create tapestries of connection. We the women are the cloth.
We the women are getting stronger. We the women stand in solidarity.
We the women create. We the women support. We the women thrive.
We the women cast roots in rich soil. We the women lean together, blades of grass to make the meadow. We the women catch sun and flower.
We the women fight back. We the women love. We the women prevail.
We the women
will gather July 19th through the 21st in the Pacific Northwest.
Hi, this is Heather Scalzi, We the Women event organizer. Thank you to WLRN for promoting our event, sure to spark the fires of change in our women's movement for our sex-based rights. Come to the beautiful Pacific Northwest this summer over the weekend of July 19th through 21st. To get your ticket, visit wethewomen.world. That's wethewomen.world.
WLRN, edition 97. Broadcasting in 3, 2, 1.
I was born woman. Off my knees I will stand for my liberation. Sisters, rise again. I was born woman. Off my knees I will stand for my liberation. Rise and rise again.
Greetings and welcome to the 97th edition podcast of Women's Liberation Radio News for this Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. This is Thistle, founding member and rabble-rouser at WLRN. Don't touch that dial. This May marks 8 years that WLRN has been in your ears to bring you our unique broadcasting of women's news, commentary, and music. Thanks for staying tuned and for the support you've shown us throughout this epic journey. This 8th anniversary episode weaves excerpts from 2 live discussions WLRN hosted on our airwaves last month to create a tapestry of analysis exploring the popularity of female icon Taylor Swift.
Oh my God!
There is a personal story here for some of our members who grew up listening to Taylor Swift and consider themselves positively influenced. There's also a story here about Emily and me and how we started dating when the album Midnights was released in 2022. I was mostly unaware of Taylor Swift, having stumbled upon the Folklore Long Pond session videos on YouTube, which I found impressive as a singer-songwriter myself, but I wasn't quite drawn in. Emily invited me to listen to Midnights, and after a first listen, I was repelled by the poppy sound and not keen on the glossy, typically feminine exterior I saw coating the album. But since then, I've listened closer, and Taylor's music has grown on me, and I've come to especially appreciate the songwriting skill and musical arrangements that went into the Folklore album. I also appreciate that my girlfriend is a Swiftie, and that I went to a Taylor Swift night at a local bar here in Madison a little while back, and was pleased to see many different groups of lesbians and women commingling and coming together socially. If the Taylor Swift phenomenon is doing anything right, it's bringing diverse women of all ages together to have fun, sing along, and dance. But is it as innocent as I'd like to think? We spend almost 2 hours in this special anniversary edition of our podcast exploring just that. So fasten your seatbelts and get ready for it. Women are cultishly attracted to this young female singer with more political and economic power than some countries. It behooves us as feminists to listen to what Taylor herself has to say in her lyrics and to have today's leading feminist analysts weigh in on the singer's influence and what it might mean for feminism and womankind. We'll hear excerpts of a roundtable discussion I hosted with my friends KatyJean from VMAX News, Zinetta from the Pacific Northwest, and Jocelyn and Emily from the WLRN Collective. We'll also hear excerpts from the discussion entitled A Feminist Analysis of Taylor Swift with Lierre and Sheila Jeffreys that happened last weekend. You can find these two discussions in their entirety on WLRN's YouTube channel under the Live tab. And now, I'd like to take a moment to tell you a bit about the organizing and editing process I went through to get to this 8-year anniversary edition. I noticed in Facebook threads and elsewhere that feminists were beginning to discuss Taylor Swift and her influence, and also that many women were butting heads about her. I saw that Lierre, a prominent radical feminist author, was coming clearly down on the side of being a Swiftie, and that Sheila Jeffreys, another prominent feminist author, was not. I admire both Lierre and Sheila immensely and wanted to see if they'd agree to discuss Swift off of Facebook and in a more formal setting. To my delight, they said yes. The WLRN Collective, sparked by Margaret, our graphic designer, began to dissect and analyze Ms. Swift and her following in our newsroom. After our discussions, I took the initiative to create questions for our panelists based on our conversations among WLRN staff. We saw and felt how influential Ms. Swift is on women worldwide, and we wanted to consult with today's top lesbian and feminist minds to be able to dissect and understand the Taylor Swift phenomenon and how it's impacting girls and women everywhere. The results, my dear listeners, are in this 97th edition of our monthly podcast. And Taylor, or someone who knows Taylor, if you get this message, please listen to the podcast in its entirety and then contact us to be in touch. We have a radical feminist in mind to talk with Taylor in person for just 10 minutes to bring her over to our side, the J.K. Rowling side of things, and to have our own turf royalty on this side of the pond. The team at WLRN produces a monthly radio broadcast to break the sound barrier women are blocked by under the status quo rule of men. This blocking of women's discourse we see in all sectors of society, be they conservative, liberal, mainstream, progressive, or radical. The thread that runs through all of American politics, except for separatist feminism, is male dominance and entitlement in all spheres. To start off today's edition, here is Mary O'Neill with women's news from around the globe for this Thursday, May 2nd, 2024.
Thanks, Thistle. The Independent Review of Gender Identity Services for Children and Young People, also known as the CAST Review, was published in April in the United Kingdom. Commissioned by NHS England, the CAST Review was tasked with ensuring that children and young people are receiving a standard of care that is safe, holistic, and effective. The final report provides an independent, systematic review of the existing evidence and previous studies of gender treatment of children and young people. Key findings include the poor quality of published studies and an acknowledgement that a medical pathway is not the best way to manage gender-related distress for the majority of patients. It also finds that scientific publications and activists alike misrepresent the current methods and effectiveness of gender-affirming treatment. The report in its entirety can be accessed at cas.independent-review.uk. Reem Al-Salam, the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, praised the CAST Review as seminal and commended its efforts to address the root cause of children's distress. In her statement, Al-Salam said, While the cast review may not have framed its conclusions and findings explicitly in human rights language, it has, in my view, very clearly shown the devastating consequences that policies on gender treatments have had on human rights of children, including girls. In Australia's New South Wales, a court must define what a woman is as part of a gender identity discrimination case. A trans-identified man sued Giggle for Girls, a women's-only social media platform, after he was blocked from the app and is seeking $200,000 in damages. Sal Grover, the CEO of the social media platform, has told the court that she will not address the trans-identified man as a woman, and that regardless of surgery and altered identification documents, he will always be a biological male. Elderly Swiss women brought a climate action case against the government of Switzerland to the European Court of Human Rights and won. The court ruled that the women's human rights have been violated when the government failed to act to combat climate change. This ruling is expected to impact other pending cases, including one that could disrupt the Norwegian oil industry. In Austria, a 24-year-old trans-identified man has been sentenced to 20 years for murdering one of his elderly patients, an 82-year-old man, on October 5th in the victim's home. The assailant stabbed the victim multiple times after the topic of gender identity came up. The trans-identified man claims that the victim teased him as a result of his gender identity. While he was initially thought to be under the influence of drugs, only alcohol was found in his system, and it was determined that he had no mental illness. He is now being held in a men's prison. 24 women have dropped out of an Australian football club due to trans-identified men being allowed to participate. Women have been injured during the matches, and one incident resulted in a trans-identified man breaking a woman's leg. Riley Dennis, a well-known trans activist, is one of 5 trans-identified men participating in the division. Previously, he was accused of injuring women when he played on a different team. Frank Parisi, the president of St. Patrick's Football Club, said that female players have been dropping out of the sport so they don't have to compete against trans-identified men. In mid-April, Iran launched a new campaign called Noor, or Light. This campaign is focused on cracking down on violations of rules regarding the hijab. Videos have emerged of women and girls being assaulted, beaten, and arrested. Dina Kalibaf, a young woman who is also a student at a university in Tehran, posted on X that she was tasered, handcuffed, and sexually assaulted. Her account is now suspended and she was transferred to Evin Prison, where political prisoners have been held since the 1970s. Gufran Sawadi, a popular Iraqi TikTok and Instagram star, was shot to death outside of her home near Baghdad. She'd previously been sentenced to 6 months in prison for the crime of producing and publishing several films and videos violating public decency and morals, according to a statement from the Iraqi judiciary. While many are mourning her death, others are celebrating the man who killed her on social media posts about her murder. Arizona's state Supreme Court ruled that an abortion ban from the 1860s, which restricts abortion in all cases except when the pregnant woman's life is at stake, should be implemented. However, the Arizona House of Representatives voted to overturn the restrictive ban after 2 previous attempts to do so failed. 3 Republicans voted with House Democrats in order to advance the legislation. In May, the state Senate is expected to pass the measure to repeal the ban completely. That concludes WLRN's World News segment for Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. I'm Mary. Share your news stories, announcements, and tips with us by emailing info@WLRNmedia.com and letting us know what's going on.
This is Joe Brew, and you are listening to WLRN.
Next up, we'll hear excerpts of 2 discussions on the Taylor Swift phenomenon Thistle hosted last month on WLRN's live channels 2 weekends in a row. In the following segments, you'll hear from Zinetta, a young lesbian feminist from the Pacific Northwest, Emily and Jocelyn from the WLRN Collective, and from KatyJean of FEMAX News. In the second segment, you'll hear from Sheila Jeffreys, who talks about Taylor Swift and the convergence of the sex industry with popular music. And then we'll hear from Lierre, who talks about Taylor's life, the obstacles she's had to overcome, and why she thinks young women are attracted to Taylor's music. These discussions are lengthy but worthy, sisters. Happy 8th anniversary to WLRN. Enjoy our in-depth collective analysis, and if you know Taylor, or someone who knows her, please be in touch. We want to connect her with a radical feminist standing by to bring her on board. Reach out at info@WLRNmedia.com. And cheers, sisters. Really, it is great to be here. Enjoy the discussions.
I am 26, so I've listened to her for the vast majority of my life. And I sort of grew up alongside her music. And that, I think, just makes it even more meaningful. My favorite song, though, would probably be Mirror Ball. It's about people pleasing and chameleon tendencies that I think a lot of women deal with because of the way we're socialized. And I just really relate to that song. And The Archer and This Is Me Trying, just all songs about what it's like to walk through the world and feel like you're not quite right.
I, didn't get into Taylor Swift when she first became famous, didn't connect with it at all. It really wasn't until the Red Taylor's version came out, which was pretty recently, and she put out the 10-minute version of All Too Well, was when I listened to it, because this hype around it was really exciting. And that song, even though I am a lesbian who has never dated a man, had a lot of resonance for me because I had been in toxic relationships. And yeah, it really made me pay attention. And I went back and listened to all of her music. And yeah, I would say All Too Well is probably my favorite song. It's the song that really got me into her as a musician. And I would also Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda is one of my favorite songs. I think that one goes hand in hand. And I've been listening to the new album the last day, and I think there's going to be a lot of favorite songs on the new album. I think she's just the poet of our time.
Thank you so much, Emily. All right, so next up, we are going to hear from our guest, Jocelyn Crowley. She is also a member of the WLRN team, and I've really been enjoying getting to know Jocelyn over the last couple of months. Is a lesbian feminist who enjoys maintaining woman-centered consciousness with other like-minded individuals. Her awareness of Taylor Swift expanded once she became a yoga teacher and noticed that many of her students enjoy the artist's songs. Jocelyn recognized the role that artists like Swift can play in catalyzing awareness regarding the beauty and desirability of female-only spaces, and she thinks this is definitely a good thing. So welcome, Jocelyn.
Awesome. So hi, yes, I am a radical lesbian feminist and loving it. I was aware tangentially of Taylor Swift throughout the years. I'm not into pop music, so I was like, okay, I see her. And then when I became a yoga teacher almost 4 years ago, I noticed that a lot of my students liked her music, and we've had several interesting conversations regarding her. And then as I continue to delve deeper and deeper into my radical feminist thought and praxis, I realized that she has a profound impact on both radical feminists and feminist discourse. My favorite song by Taylor is the duet that she did, I Don't Want to Live Forever, because melancholy is my favorite type of music. I love sad songs. I think they're the absolute best. There's nothing that she's really written that or performed that I dislike profoundly, but I Don't Want to Live Forever is my favorite song by her.
Okay, thank you so much, Jocelyn. So here are all of the guests, and I am your host, Thistle Pedersen. Welcome. This is WLRN, feminist community-powered radio that's been around for 8 years. So this is an 8-year anniversary celebration in addition to a discussion of Taylor Swift. WLRN has been around for that long, for and by women only, and we consider women to be adult human females, and we consider any woman a woman who can be reached, who can have a discussion about her liberation and about women's liberation. And so we wanted to create a DIY channel that's a collective, that represents a collective, collaborative spirit that is often, something that's lacking in male culture is that spirit of collaboration. And so that's what WLRN is about. And now we're going to go to the very first official question. All of our speakers got these questions ahead of time. All right. It's clear that the majority of Taylor's fans are girls and women. Is she a good role model for us? Why or why not? Many in the feminist world have pointed to Taylor's billionaire status, among other things that set her apart from the ordinary woman, yet she appeals to the ordinary woman who will never have the influence and power she has. Her fandom reminds me of the loyalty and passionate feeling the Princess Diana phenomenon got back in the 1980s and 1990s. Does she function as American royalty on some level? And is this good for women? Why or why not? We're going to start with Zinetta is going to be answering that question.
I think in general, it's not really a good thing to look at somebody as a role model, at least flat out. It sort of removes our critical thinking if we see someone as just a role model, because everyone is complicated, and it's very rare that anybody is going to do everything the way that you would, or the way that you think is right and moral. And so I think the answer is yes and no. She's a role model by showing girls that our feelings and stories matter, that even the little things that men like to make fun of as trivial, which is why she largely gets a lot of hatred from a lot of men. And she tells us that it matters. And she's created this whole fan community that is really supportive towards girls and women, a community that feels safe for them, where their feelings, their experiences, what they think, all of that matters. Like I went to the Eras tour, and it just felt so special compared to all of the other concerts I've been to. Everyone was exchanging friendship bracelets and even like helping out little girls that they weren't related to, like lifting them up on their shoulders so the mom could get a break, and just paying extra attention to them to make it a good experience. And she's also imparts some values that I think are really important, like being yourself, whether or not she really follows through with that between her personal self and her persona. But like the way that she dances oddly at shows and behaves in ways that people kind of question, but is just her being like genuine and joyful in the moment. So I think all of that is a good role model. But then also, you know, she's a billionaire. She has see-through capitalist schemes, like all the different variants that just fill up the landfills, or will one day, and all of her pollution on the jet with her jet and all of that. But ultimately, I don't really think it matters if she's a good role model, because that's not really something we hold male celebrities to. Like most of the men that are celebrities are not good role models in any way, let alone always.
Thank you so much, Thistle, for having me on the program. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad to be joined with all these other brilliant women. Also, happy anniversary, WLRN. And this is the second in a row anniversary episode that I've been able to be a part of. So I'm just really grateful to WLRN for giving me a voice on this issue. I would say that the thing that I thought about that really is the difference between royalty and everybody else is royalty gets something handed to them for free that they're just born into, that has nothing to do with anything they did. It's just handed to them. Whereas everybody else, we have to work for a living. Taylor Swift is living room dancing and kitchen table bills. She was born to ordinary parents who got divorced when she was a kid. She has a brother. They grew up in, Pennsylvania, and her parents decided to believe in her dream and invest in her because she was working hard and doing it and she wasn't just singing the songs and just dancing. She was writing the songs, and she wasn't just writing bebop bubblegum songs. She was being introspective about her life. So I think that Taylor Swift is a role model because she has worked hard to find a place for herself and earn every single dollar that is she is a billionaire. She's absolutely a billionaire, and she's earned every single dollar of that. There's no government subsidy. There's no inheritance. There's nothing behind what Taylor has other than her own ingenuity and bringing people along with her. And yeah, I mean, like, also, I think that Taylor Swift represents, in terms of like women versus men, girls versus boys, all, you know, like all of that. Really, when you go to a concert, it's a woman-centered experience, but it's not only women. So like when you're at this woman-centered experience, and I totally echo what Zinetta said about the feel, it's a totally different feeling. It's a feeling to me of like what it would be like if women ran things. I felt safe. I felt like I could be myself and felt like that was okay. I was comfortable among other women. The men were behaving. It was so, you know, there's dads, there's boyfriends, there's, you know, just guys who are Taylor Swift fans, and they're all there behaving themselves because this is a woman-led structure, a community. This is a community that's run by Taylor's rules, and Taylor's rules are to be nice to each other. And so that's what people do. And I love it. I wish I could be at a Taylor Swift run event every weekend of my life.
All right. Thank you, KatyJean. And thank you for the well wishes for our anniversary, our 8th year anniversary. So we're going to bring up Emily now. She's going to answer.
Yeah, I think I agree with things that Zinetta said, and I disagree. Like, I agree and disagree with some of the things that all these women are saying, because like, I think the thing that is admirable about Taylor Swift that women and young girls can look up to is the honesty she puts into her songwriting and the craft of songwriting that she has, and that is something that young women should and want to emulate, being able to sit down and put pen to paper and get out your angry feelings and then hone those angry and sad feelings and turn them into artwork. Like, I think that is a really beautiful and healthy way to process emotions for girls to, you know, have as a skill set. And yeah, like, I agree with what Zinetta said about the manufactured crap. I disagree with what KatyJean said about a little bit about Taylor, like in the earning of the money. Like, I don't think Taylor Swift would be a billionaire if it wasn't for the craft. Like, if she only sold her music, I don't think she would be a billionaire. And that's one of my biggest criticisms of Taylor is like this album that she just put out. It was one album, but then it's 2 albums. Like, I had saved the album on my music app, and then in the morning when it was like, oh, it's 2 albums, I was like, I'm going to delete this album that's only half the album and just download the double album, having these like multiple versions of things. Just, I agree. I think it just is a waste. I mean, I personally think that Taylor Swift should just like fire all of the corporations that she works for and just have a website and just put an album out whenever she wants, and we can all just download it. Like, she doesn't need the money. She doesn't need to be making money. She could be doing these concerts for free. If we lived in a matriarchy where it wasn't capitalist patriarchy, is sort of like the magical vision. Because, like, I wish I could have gone to that concert. It's amazing. I think these women have had this incredible experience, but it cost a lot of money. It cost a lot of money to be able to go and have that experience. And, you know, Thistle and I have talked about how there are also women creating, like, low-income women or just women who couldn't get tickets, because a lot of people couldn't get tickets, who were creating that same atmosphere out in the parking lot, where a lot of shows you could just hear the whole concert from the parking lot. But yeah, I mean, you have to have money to be able to attend these safe spaces in the concert. But I also think that women are making safe spaces everywhere because they're connecting about Taylor Swift and enjoying her music. And I think that is a great thing that she's doing for girls and women, is getting girls and women to talk to each other about their deep emotions. And that's the coolest thing that I think I see that makes me think she is a good role model for young women, is like women listening to this new album that just came out and putting on their social medias, like, how I relate to this part because of that guy, and on all the gals in the comments, just, oh my God, I relate to that too. And I think having women talk to each other about, hey, this guy did this bad thing to me, oh my God, I also experienced, like, that is really, really powerful. Getting women to talk to each other about the ways that men have harmed them. And that is a really powerful thing. That in, you know, I don't know about making a judgment call. Does it even out with like the plastic crap? I don't know. I think there's the good and the bad.
So thank you, Emily.
Does everybody know? We had the first question was about what our favorite albums are, and I just want to call out that Taylor Swift has said in an Easter egg that she thinks the Folklore album is, quote, her best work. So just wanted to say that Taylor's opinion herself is that her best album is the Folklore album. That was,
you know what's that's funny
midnight.
Because that's funny. I totally agree with her. I totally agree with her. The Folklore album is well written and inspired piece of songwriting, compilation of songs that were written so well. So go ahead, Jocelyn.
Yes, thank you so much. So I agree with Zinetta that the term role model is problematic, especially from a radical feminist perspective, in which case we're criticizing heteropatriarchy and all of its toxic products, one of which is affect and automaticity and keeping things going when they're not working, being the type of community and society that is predicated on the image and how things look, such that there are models. And instead of actual breathing, being individuals who are subject to ongoing and constant change and shift, we have types. So, within the heteropatriarchal model, we have male and we have female, and attached to the reality of sexual dimorphism is gender and the specific ways that women are supposed to behave and the specific behaviors that men are supposed to affect to thrive in society and to obtain approval. And with all of that modeling comes false standards and comes being boxed in and comes being confined, women in pink and men in blue and all of the nonsense. And it doesn't just pertain to gendered modeling, it pertains to the model of humanity. So if you create the standard that a good model is an individual who is calm, cool, and collected, meaning that if you have an emotional outburst, you failed. Right. So then what do we do with emotionality and the thoughts and the feelings that we have? If being a good person means that I never have an outburst, then any type of emotional display means I'm wrong and I'm bad and I'm not a good model. And, for me as a radical feminist, as I go on being in the world, it's like, actually, no. It's okay to cry. There may be an angry outburst. Women don't always wear pink. Men don't always wear blue. So the model type to me is antiquated, ideologically, intellectually, and empathically. It's not a viable way to be in the world. So I don't think that we should aspire to make Taylor Swift or anyone a model. And the answer to the model question doesn't pertain to how she represents herself or her subjectivity. It's just the inefficacy of modeling in general. We're all beings going through a wide range of experiences, and the way we respond in any moment is subject to change. So that's my view on the model. We just need to retire it as radical feminists. It's completely non-confluent and non-intuitive. As far as Taylor Swift and the royalty, it's definitely problematic that we can accurately apply that term to her. I definitely think that applying the term royalty to her is correct. And it's problematic, not because she has done anything innately wrong or bad, but because we still live in a society here in America and in many countries abroad where in order to attain approval, in order to attain a high level of visibility, you conform to a specific set of stereotypes in terms of modeling, and then you attain fans, you attain wealth, and under heteropatriarchy, you attain male approval. And so I do think that she is royalty in that sense. I think that she has a wide fan base, and I think that as radical feminists, if we're serious about our feminism, then it just needs to be critiqued. Why does a woman like Taylor Swift attain more social power and authority than a woman like Daisy Coleman? I could say both names to people, and the majority of people most likely will know who Taylor Swift is, and the majority most likely will not know Daisy Coleman. That's a problem. The status that she has attained simply as a result of her artistry and as a result of being likable, it is a problem.
Okay, thank you so much, Jocelyn, for that. Now we're going to go back to our order of questions, and we're talking about Lavender Haze, the song she made this artistic video. She hired a woman who had her breast removed, and you see in the video a scene where they're in bed and you see the scars underneath the breasts of the woman who is a trans man, and you also see all the lavender haze, lavender being a color that's often associated with lesbians, and And obviously this is a lesbian encounter because it's a same-sex encounter. And but yet it's promoting transgenderism, it's promoting body mutilation. And so what about that? How can we as feminists turn a blind eye to that? And not only is she doing that in this video, but she's giving large sums of money to organizations that promote body mutilation and transgenderism. So we're going to start with Zinetta. She is going to answer this question about Lavender Haze and the LGBT lobby that Taylor supports. And I'm going to give it over to you, Zinetta. Go for it.
So my thoughts on this are kind of in two parts. The first being that she features lesbians and gay men. All of her stuff regarding the trans issue has been lesbians and gay men, and that identify as trans. And most people are coming at supporting this, trying to be good. They want to do the right thing. They want to do the good thing. They don't want to be on the wrong side of history. They don't want to hurt anyone. They want people to be themselves. They're doing what they think is right. And I try to assume that they just have different information than I do, that they are trying to come at it from what they think is right. And while I do disagree, I try to see the intent behind why someone supports something rather than just whether or not they support it. I try to look at the morals and the values behind why they do what they do and why they believe what they believe. And of course, there is a negative impact that it still has, like a more tangible impact, especially because of her status. But that leads to my second part, which is that I just don't expect celebrities to follow my morals and values. I don't look at them as role models. There are things that they do that I sometimes want to emulate because I think it's a good thing, like her feeling free to dance even when people say it looks stupid. But I don't look at them as a whole as like trying to be representative of my morals and values. And I still consume art by men. Like I still watch movies produced and written by men. And I just think that it would be hypocritical of me to hold a female celebrity to a higher standard when I'm still consuming anything, even in part created by men. And that honestly, there would be no art to consume other than just a few artists if I really expected artists to emulate everything, I believe. Back to you, Thistle.
Thank you so much, Zinetta. We now have 31 viewers with us live. This is wonderful. Welcome to WLRN's airwaves. If you're just joining us now, we are doing a nationwide discussion with radical feminists from across the country. We've got KatyJean from FEMAX. If you just want to wave when I say your name. We've got Emily Faye from WLRN. We've got Zinetta from the Pacific Northwest. We've got, we've got Jocelyn also from WLRN. And I'm Thistle Pedersen, your host. If you'd like to donate to WLRN, we have been on the airwaves for 8 years, bringing you unique feminist content that you won't find anywhere else because we do it collaboratively. We like to create a chorus of women's voices rather than just having one single woman's voice representing a lot of us, which is kind of ironic because in a way we also see the value of analyzing an individual's voice like Taylor Swift's voice when they do have so much power and prestige in the larger world to analyze and understand society better and our role as feminists in our society and how we can find each other and have a conversation with one another as women and bring more women on board to radical feminism. I do think that the Taylor Swift phenomenon has that potential because women love her and she brings a lot of joy. And when women are joyfully dancing together, our suggestions towards radical feminism become more receptive, let's say. And so I feel like the joy that Taylor brings creates an atmosphere, a woman-focused, woman-centered atmosphere where we can have these conversations. We're not in men's world when we're having this conversation, and certainly not on WLRN's channels. So thank you, Zinetta. We are moving on now to KatyJean. She's going to talk about Lavender Haze and the portrayal of transgenderism as this sexy thing, you know, in that video. And yet we see the scars under this woman's breasts where they've been removed. And we all know as radical feminists that transgenderism is not gay. It's not lesbian. It's harmful. It's harmful to gay and lesbian spaces, especially lesbian spaces. So how do we reconcile that as feminists and still wanting to listen to the music of Taylor Swift? All right, KatyJean.
Perfect. So my approach to this is similar to how I would approach it with a friend. So I don't believe that somebody has to be in lockstep agreement with me on every single position that I have, politically, personally, religious, social, all of the positions that I have and opinions that I have on this world around me. You don't have to agree with everything that I think to be my friend. We can be friends even if we disagree on things. And this is something that I disagree with Taylor Swift on, and yet I can still find things to like. Something that I do want to point out, though, is that I've often been accused of being a transphobe, which I don't think is even a real thing because it's a non-existent phobia of a non-existent thing. It's not possible for a human being to change his or her sex. But let's get at the root of what that is. It is something that I am not, which is somebody who is not capable of socializing with a pluralistic society and all of the people in it and all of the things they have done to themselves and yet are still, you know, human beings. So to that end, I say, let's take away the Halloween costume. Taylor Swift had a lesbian scene. She did a romantic lesbian scene in a whole music video and, you know, did that. When we take away the Halloween costume, that's what it is. That was two women. So I think that is great. It's conflicted. It's conflicted, right? So, but here's the thing. Here's what I was going back to on being phobic. I'm jumping around a little bit, but I remember my point, and that is people have accused me of being phobic, and I'm not phobic. My boundary is the bathroom. My boundary is women's sports. My boundary is women's spaces. I can work with people. I can be in social events with people. I can attend a concert next to somebody who is, you know, wearing a Halloween costume or is pretending to be the opposite sex or whatever people are doing. I can socially engage with these people. My boundary is the bathroom, which now, Thistle, let's cue it up and look at what Taylor Swift has said about the bathroom. She, in her music video for a song called I Bet You Think About Me on her Taylor's Version album of Red, featured a men's bathroom with a man
wondering if you click
in the men's bathroom. And I want to offer that as contrast to the Lavender Haze video or the another video that makes some feminists upset is the video for You Need to Calm Down. But that one is where she is dancing and getting on and getting along with men who are pretending to be women, which again, socially, you know, that's the thing. I just don't want these men coming into my bathroom. And that's my boundary for me. That's why I'm not phobic, right? So in that way, I feel like Taylor Swift's message here showing the but we'll see. Here we go. This is the men's bathroom. And you can see there's a man in a dress in the bathroom. That's all we needed to see. And we all saw it. There was a man in a skirt in the men's bathroom at the I call it the Standard Upper Number plumbing facility there, and you know the men's plumbing in the bathroom, and that is where the man in his dress was standing. So if that's what she's promoting, then I'm for that. Like I said, I'm not a phobe. I can be social with the various people that we share the earth with. I just want men to stay in the men's bathroom and men to stay in their own sports. And we haven't heard what Taylor Swift has to say about sports yet. My point is just I appreciate Taylor portraying men being in the men's bathroom rather than in the women's bathroom, even men who are wearing skirts or whatever. And then just in terms of her donations, yes, she's made donations to those causes that promote things that I disagree with. But she's also done things like a mother whose son died of cancer. She made her a co-author of a song that she wrote about this boy. And so that mother for the rest of her life gets royalties from this song that she included. The song is called Ronan. It's on Red, Taylor's version. And you can listen to it and benefit that mother every time you play it. She has donated to schools, to food shelves, to animal foundations. And also she has donated a lot to things that have to do with promoting women in terms of women advancing their careers, survivors of sexual assault, hurricane relief, more sexual assault. So like if you just go through and look at all of the ways that she's contributed money, by and large, it's not to things that are advancing the patriarchy. It's the things that are advancing women, children, and protecting our environment. And so I'm grateful for the choices that Taylor Swift has made with her dollars. I don't agree with her on every single dollar, but I don't agree with her on everything. But again, you don't have to agree with everything that I think to be my friend.
Okay, thank you so much, KatyJean. Yes, we have disagreements amongst ourselves at WLRN, but yet we still band together as a group of radical feminists because we know we're stronger when we're together. So thank you for that answer. And now we are going to move on to Emily. She's going to talk about the Lavender Haze video, the financial support that Taylor gives to the trans lobby, and how she encourages her fans to vote for the Equality Act and to replace the word sex with gender identity. Like, how can we justify this as radical feminists and still enjoy her music? Go ahead, Emily.
I mean, I would put like my plainest answer would be that like we don't have to. I like Zinetta said, like I consume a lot of art from people who don't align with my beliefs and people who I think are doing bad things in the world. And my first reaction to the announcement, like when I first heard that there was going to be a woman that identified as trans in one of Taylor's videos, is I was like, because maybe not everyone is aware, but there's a rumor amongst some people who enjoy Taylor Swift that she might be gay. And there's Taylor Swift is known for putting little secret messages in everything and having it connect like this thing to that thing to that thing. And so of course people naturally are like, but here's this imagery that makes it seem like you're gay, because we're not going to like go deep into that. But yeah, I mean, my first initial thing, I was like, wow, she's really like daring the people who are into these Gaylor rumors to say something, because are you going to say? You're going to say, here's the proof. Here's the proof. She's in bed with a woman. I don't care what that woman looks like. That's a woman. Or are you going to be polite and not mention that because it's this woman believes she's a man or whatever. So I thought that was really interesting. And I also, I mean, I don't know. I think the thing that really put it into a different perspective for me was very recently Taylor put these playlists out on Apple Music, and there was little messages before these playlists that people were saying, they're 5 stages of grief, that she had taken songs from her previous albums and put them in these playlists that had a theme. And the playlist that she put Lavender Haze on was the denial playlist, the playlist about being in denial about what reality is. And if you listen to the song, the song is about being in the magic of a new relationship and that haze, that lavender haze. She's also talked in an interview about how she heard the phrase lavender haze as being something from like the 1950s, and that it was in the time that this phrase was originally used, that it was meant to be like, oh girl, you're in that lavender haze of a new relationship, everything's glittering gold. And I think that is interesting. I would be curious to know whether or not Taylor Swift heard that phrase from a lesbian woman from the 1950s, was that a phrase that was used amongst heterosexual people or between gay people? It sounds like a phrase that was used between gay people and not something that was used between heterosexuals, but we don't know. And yeah, so she put the Lavender Haze on this Denial playlist, and I think all of these playlists are a way for her as an older woman to look back on her music and recategorize it in a way, look back on these love songs she wrote where she was just, wide-eyed and naive, and put them on a playlist of like, now me as a 34-year-old woman, I can look back on that and say like, wow, I wasn't in love, I was in delusion. And so maybe we could make the argument, looking at the Lavender Haze song and video, but putting in the context of the playlist that she most recently put it on, and say that she is also saying that woman I was when I put a woman who identifies as a man and looks like this in my video as my romantic partner, I was being delusional. I think that the argument can be made that she's looking back on it that way, but yeah, I don't know. I think Taylor does so much good for women, and yeah, it would be really amazing if she could be as outspoken in a way as J.K. Rowling is. And wow, how could that radically change the situation for women in the United States if someone like Taylor Swift came out and said, no, explicitly, like, I'm not putting this in poetry or in music, I'm telling you in explicit words, men aren't women, get these men out of women's prisons, get these men out of women's sports, blah, blah, like, I would love that. That'd be great. I wish she could do that. I think going forward, she's only going to speak to us through her music, and that she's getting away from doing interviews with anybody, getting away from anybody else telling her story in any way. And that's one of really the only way we have to know what she thinks and feels is going to be through the metaphors in her music. And we'll see what the future holds for how she is. I hope, sorry, my last point, I think if you look at Taylor's music from beginning to end, yes, she's a person, yes, she's going through her life and she's writing this music that we're listening to, but when Taylor is dead years from now, you will look back only on her music as a story. And the story of the girl from her first album living her life through all these other albums is a story of a very American woman being sold an idea about love and marriage and heterosexuality and fairy tale princesses, and reconciling that as she has relationships and as she grows into a woman. I wanted to believe these things as a child. I wanted to believe in true love. These men don't treat me the way that it's supposed to be in the story. How is my reality different from the story I've been told? And also, as I'm growing older, maybe I don't want that bullshit love and marriage and heterosexuality, but I'm still a person and I need love and I need companionship and I need belonging. And where do we as women and, lesbians find that balance between wanting to be loved and cherished and wanting to have a relationship and not falling into the pitfalls of the idea of heterosexual romantic love? That even as a lesbian, I was raised by heterosexual parents, I watched heterosexual media growing up, all of that still influences me as a lesbian and how I am and have been and learned to be in my relationships. And so I would love it if the rest of Taylor's story, the next few albums, she reads some Dworkin, she turfs out, and she starts making music just for women and becomes a lesbian. That would be super cool.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. It would be super cool, but as somebody said in the comments, it's probably not very likely. We know, yes, Zay. We know that she's a billionaire, that she's playing the capitalism game, and that she's got a whole team that works on her image and what she can and she can't really focus on and say based on their political assessment of what's going on in politics. So, it's interesting. She's a woman in patriarchy, and yet she, like a lot of women in patriarchy, has moments where she breaks free and bonds with other women, and we want to see more of those moments, not fewer of those moments. Welcome to everyone who has joined our live stream today. This is Thistle Pedersen, and we have 33 viewers right now. Thank you so much for joining our nationwide conversation about the singer-songwriter and pop musician Taylor Swift. Today we are doing the first in a two-part series. Today we're talking with lay women, friends of mine. We've got KatyJean from FEMAX. That's FEMAX with a double X. She runs a Thursday night discussion group for women online. And then we've got Emily Faye, who is a member of the WLRN Collective. We've got Jocelyn Crawley, who is also a member of the WLRN Collective. And we have Zinetta, who is our friend from the Pacific Northwest. She's a lesbian feminist and enjoys Taylor Swift's music and analyzing her lyrics. So welcome to this WLRN discussion. And now we are going to move on to Jocelyn, who's going to answer this question about Lavender Haze.
Yes, so good to be here and to continue on. So first, bodily mutilation. I remember during the incipient stages of my feminist consciousness, this was not even when I got to radical feminism, but when I was in the incipient stages of feminist consciousness, and I was an undergraduate at Georgia State University taking feminist classes, and there was actually a male professor who discussed bodily mutilation as a representation of woman hating. And this was a very new concept to me, and I hadn't really thought about it, but he spoke about how in so many films in pop culture, women's bodies are chopped up and men's bodies remain intact. When we look at a lot of pornographic films and a lot of torture practices that are exhibited against women, the mutilation of female bodies is a classic patriarchal pattern that we see everywhere. I also attribute bodily mutilation to a lot of practices that are considered to be cosmetic, that are just constantly about chopping women's bodies up. The female body never being enough as it is, always having to undergo alteration, making the nose thinner, making the lips fatter, making the breasts larger, making the glutes larger. There's just always something wrong with the female body. There's just always something wrong with it. And I remember when this professor began to explain it, I thought, wow, it's horrific that I live in a world where men's bodies as they are fine and they're celebrated. And this subtle celebration of the male body is that nothing has to be done to it. It's just fine to not have any type of makeup on my face. I don't have to do anything when I go out. The female body, on the other hand, is always wrong. It's always bad. Has to have foundation to cover up, the face, which, these cosmetics companies are run by men. So we're making men rich buying these cosmetics anyway. All right. So the bodily mutilation for me starts there with women hating. Women who are biologically female under the system of sexual dimorphism, which is reality. I agree with KatyJean. There are two sexes. They are male and female. And under patriarchy, it is the female body that is hated and this female body that is mutilated. Now, the new level of patriarchy that we are experiencing under the transgender movement is that we're going to celebrate bodily mutilation and we're going to get behind it because it's a sign of liberation. And so it's illogic. And that's how the patriarchy is. It works in reversals. It takes what is reality and it makes it a fiction. And we all have to celebrate the fiction and go along with it. So because of patriarchy and its gender models telling people that the way that they already exist, the female body is wrong or the male body is wrong. Now we're going to mutilate our bodies again and turn them into the other sex through the mutilation. And we're going to celebrate that process of destroying our bodies. That's the logic that we're dealing with. When we look at the video that Taylor Swift puts out here, and we have the mutilation of it, what we have essentially is colluding with the oppressor, is what it is. It's agreeing with the master narrative. That's what this is, and that's upon Taylor.
the infinite beauty and the infinite ugliness of human subjectivity is that we have the ability to operate according to constrained free will. We can't control what happens to us, but we have limited agency in responding to the world that we are brought into and how we're going to respond to the ideologies that are presented to us. I think what is challenging for many open-minded people and many progressive people is that the quote unquote correct response from most liberal camps and progressive camps now is you accept anything and everything that anyone tells you about gender, and whatever they say is the law. And if you don't go along with it, then you're a hater. You're hating you're hating on them. You're hating on their reality, and you have to back off, or you have to be silenced, or you have to be taken off the radio, and you'll be canceled. And it's also, I think my background is in English. I think it's 1984. I think it's very George Orwell, and I think it's very much hatred of the body is now love for the body. And if you don't agree with us, there is no room for free speech, and you're taken off the air. And at the same time that you are taken off the air, you're silenced and you're canceled. It's because we're celebrating free speech, the free speech to mutilate our bodies. So it is what it is. For Taylor to participate in it is upon her. She has the capital, she has the social privilege, and she has access to the social channels that are necessary for her to create a following, and for her to create a fan base of individuals who will go along with what she's doing. I also agree, I was taking notes. I also agree with what Emily stated earlier, which is that I can listen to and appreciate an artist without agreeing with everything that they say and do. I definitely find that to be the case with myself as a radical feminist, for sure, because much of what is put forth in all types of lyrics and music videos is going to be female objectification, because that's integral to the patriarchal model. And even individuals who are consciously aware that that is a patriarchal model are still willing to replicate that. Like my favorite artist of all time, Fiona Apple, in her video Criminal. She's very, very scantily clad in that video, and she's a highly conscious woman. So I think that most people on some level are willing to quote unquote play along with these master narratives, and as Segment Sheila said, go along to get along. So here we are, trapped in patriarchy and heteropatriarchy, and we're all deciding what we're going to do and how much we're going to put up with. I was speaking with an amazing woman in the yoga studio yesterday, and we were exchanging narratives regarding yoga philosophy and how people show up in the world. And she gave the narrative of a woman who wanted to win a man's love and prove to her father that she didn't need to go along with him at the same time. So she chose this man that she was going to be with, that she wanted to be in love with. And she decided to pretend, because she was a warrior and she was very strong, she decided to pretend that she was not strong enough to win a fight. And this man that she was in love with, she allowed him to win the battle for her. So, this is the world that we're in. People are making choices regarding whether they're going to go along with the patriarchy and to what extent. So Taylor has made her choice in this moment, and that's my view on that. With respect to the money that is being put into the LGBTQ community, it is a classic move of liberal feminism and liberalism in general, and neoliberalism, to throw money at problems and to say that my demonstrated commitment, my display of empathy, and my display of solidarity is to donate large sums of monies to these charities. And whether an individual is actually ideologically and empathically committed to a cause, and whether they actually understand the cause in full, and have actually gone back and done the research on it, coming back to the amazing assessment. It would be great if, Taylor Swift would go back and read some Dworkin, and also some Catherine McKinnon as well, some, Audre Lorde, and on we could go. But it's upon individuals to decide what ideological allegiance looks like. And it's classic for liberals to believe that they're demonstrating their faithfulness and they're demonstrating their allegiance by donating money, large sums of money, to these charities, when we know as radicals, most of the radicals that I know and commune with agree, The problem with heteropatriarchy and patriarchy is that it's a system. So putting money back into the system instead of getting to the root of what the system is and utterly rejecting it and burning it down and creating an alternative system is the solution. So if that's not what you're looking at and you're continuing to assimilate and creating these structures and working within the system of oppression, then your efficacy is going to be limited, as most activist efforts, in my opinion, that are not explicitly radical and explicitly anarchic are. And, I've had this conversation with many radicals in writing over the years. Then the next question becomes, if you are not going to leave the system completely, if you're not going to live on a lesbian commune, or if you're not going to be, off the radar, what are you going to do? I've even listened to some feminists and some radicals say, I'm going to do nothing. I'm just not going to participate. Because when we are faced with the patriarchy, when we are faced with lesbian hatred, and we do something in a very visible way, we're attacked in highly conspicuous ways. We're ridiculed. We receive death threats and so on and so forth. So that's also a response that is somewhat prevalent now. Do nothing. Taylor's response is to put money into these LGBTQ communities. And again, in a world where a certain level of subjectivity is going to be present, that is her choice. That is the way that she's choosing to respond. My response to that is your efficacy is going to be limited if one of your primary tools is going to be money. If you're going to go towards throwing money at the problem rather than addressing it as a systematic issue and talking about how you can build an alternative system instead of investing in it, then the efficacy is going to be limited.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Yeah, efficacy in terms of building a women's liberation movement, a movement where women are truly bonding with each other long-term and breaking free from male rule. And I would agree with you on that. Thank you so much for that point of view. We now have 44 live viewers, ladies. So thank you so much for tuning in to WLRN's first in a two-part series discussion of Taylor Swift. And we are now going to move on to the next question. But before we do that, I just like to talk a little bit more about WLRN and who we are and what we've been doing for the last 8 years. I was banned from the community radio station 89.9 FM WORT here in Madison because I interviewed Sheila Jeffreys, a lesbian feminist scholar who's going to be doing an analysis of Taylor Swift on our next live stream program. And I got on the radio station here in my hometown, a place that I had volunteered at for years and had a very friendly relationship with. It's kind of like a community center. People go and hang out there. They put on a lot of parties and they support live musicians, or they support musicians, local musicians, and live music shows in our community. And I was a part of all of that. And then I got curious about Sheila Jeffreys and her book, Gender Hurts, a feminist analysis of transgenderism. And I interviewed her in 2014, and it caused this huge stir, and I was banned from the radio station temporarily, was able to somehow make my way in there again and do another radio show that featured lesbians and radical feminists at the Michigan Women's Music Festival. And now I'm completely banned from the community radio station, and I've had to create our own feminist-powered community radio station in the Femisphere, and that's WLRN. And if you'd like to make a special 8-year anniversary donation, you can go to WLRNmedia.com and click on the donate button. You can also visit our merch tab and buy some of our fabulous radical feminist merch that also supports our endeavor here in the studios of WLRN. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do you agree that Taylor's relationship with her fans is unhealthy? I'm going to thank you so much, Zinetta, for being here. She is our lesbian feminist friend from the Pacific Northwest. And Zinetta, what do you think? Do you think that the relationship Taylor has with her fans is a healthy one or not?
I absolutely think it's an unhealthy relationship for her and for the fans who have a parasocial attachment to her. recently, in the last couple of years, there was an online petition on, I think even on change.org, trying to get her to have a different relationship than the one she had. And I think she would agree that it's unhealthy. On her most recent album, there's a lot of lyrics just calling out her fans for having like this unhealthy attachment, trying to dictate what she does with her life. And honestly, the whole album, I was just thinking, wow, she really went there, and people are still going to eat it up. But yeah, I think it's unhealthy for everyone involved, and I think that she seems to be trying to start moving away from it to some degree.
Okay, thank you, Zinetta. So next we're going to, all right, go ahead, KatyJean.
Thank you, Thistle. So yeah, I mean, like, true confessions, I might be that fan. I might be that kind of, I mean, like I have human friends, but like on the list of women I feel like I know well and who know me well, it is the relationship that I have with myself and Taylor Swift's music. And so like when I am in, you know, my space alone and I'm listening to Taylor Swift's music and I'm really taking it in, it offers for me a backdrop against which I can have a conversation with myself and I can learn and know myself. And, you know, like, I mean, when you're going through hard stuff, like really hard stuff, sometimes your real life friends don't all have the capacity for hearing you share every single thing that you need to share about the hard things that you're going through. And so like for me, I've needed other outlets for some of the really, really hard things that I'm going through as a woman that men don't have to go through. The experiences I'm having, the difficulties in my life are uniquely female difficulty. And Taylor Swift has created in her music a space in which I can have that introspective dialogue with myself. Yeah, I happen to know all of the names in order of all of the men she's publicly dated. I know that. And I know all of her albums in order. And I can tell you that. And I can tell you all of the individual songs she's done in between. And I know all the inside jokes. Yes, whale! And all of that stuff. And for me, that is the way that I connect when I'm at a Taylor Swift event with the other women who are also there. And we connect together and bond over Yes, Whale, because Taylor is the central thing. So I have like this instant friendship that I can just pull up with anybody that I meet, whether it's in the line at the grocery store and there's a Taylor Swift magazine and I want to pick up a Taylor Swift magazine and look at it. And of course I'm going to buy it, right? If I pick it up. But then, you know, that starts a conversation with maybe somebody in front or behind me in the line. And now I have this material with which to have just an instant little friendship. So that is what my experience with Taylor Swift has to me. And like, I've never really gone deeper like that with other things that I've been interested in, whether, you know, in the pop culture sphere. Like I've been a super fan of things like all the way back to like I was a big fan of Whitney Houston and the New Kids on the Block. I had bed sheets and buttons and everything you could imagine from the New Kids on the Block. And yet they didn't take me deeper in the same way that music with Taylor Swift does. And same thing. I'm a fan of Miley Cyrus. I'm a fan of Olivia Rodrigo. I'm a fan of a lot of great Kate Nash. Yeah, Kate Nash. Great woman artist out of the UK. Anyway, lots of women's music to like. And it makes me think, but it doesn't make me really like tap into that friendship that I have with myself like Taylor Swift does. And so that's kind of the other side, I think, maybe of what some people that don't understand all of that might critique about having a deep relationship with your fandom to Taylor Swift, being a Swiftie. Go ahead, Thistle.
Okay, thank you so much, KatyJean, for sharing that and for saying that it might not be the healthiest of relationships, but yet it's you have a relationship with her art, not with her. You know, her art is something that speaks to you, and that she talks about how she writes her songs in a way that they're specific to her life, but they're also holographic, and you can project your own self into the song, and that it's about you and your relationships and your struggle too, because she's specific yet also very general. And I would say that is quite a talent, a songwriting talent. And I think that a lot of songs are like that. Really great songs are personal. Look at Joni Mitchell's Blue album. They were so critical. The people back then were so critical of her in 1968 or 69 when she put that out. 1968, 1969, when Joni Mitchell put Blue, the album Blue, out, she was told that it was too intimate, it was too personal. She was talking about her deep personal feelings and intimate relationships, and it was just too much. And in a way, it's like the way women are oppressed in patriarchy is through our interpersonal relationships, is like a huge way that women are controlled and oppressed. And so telling women to not put that into their art, how feminist is that? I think women should be encouraged to use art as a way to get in touch with our feelings and our raw rage and feelings that we have about patriarchy. So I really appreciated your answer, KatyJean. We're going to go on now to the relationship that Taylor has with her fans. Is it a healthy one? Jocelyn, are you with us?
Yes, thank you so much. So first, I wanted to say I had a deep appreciation, and I was trying to write it in my notes. I didn't have time, but I was going to write a complete yes to the response that one has a relationship with the artist's art, not with the person, right? So in this relationship that Taylor Swift has with her fans and determining whether it's unhealthy, the criteria for health to me as a radical feminist is reality. Is it reality? And it's this very unreal world, which is very prevalent in the 21st century. We're more deeply and deeply embedded in non-reality, in virtual reality, in graphic reality, in social media reality, online friendships. And I'm not downplaying online friendships because I have them and they're precious, but in the unreal. So when we talk about the relationship that Taylor has with her fans, when these individuals say that they have a relationship with her in terms of sitting down and having conversations with her, in terms of being up until 3 a.m. Sharing coffee and talking about a breakup, no. What we're talking about is the relationship that they have with Taylor through the iconography, through images, through following her, through watching her cheer her boyfriend on in the NFL game, and so on and so forth. So to me, it's unhealthy to the level that it's unreal. These individuals do not know Taylor Swift. They know a persona of her. When I was putting together when I was looking at images and I was seeing snippets of conversations and an interview with Barbara Walters with her and things of that nature, I just kept concluding, I can't get a sense of who she is. And I'm thinking even now, because you don't know her. You see images of Taylor Swift, you see interviews with Taylor Swift. That doesn't mean that you know her. And so what the individuals who are fans of her have is a relationship with what they see. And it reminds me of some very important ideas that resonated with me when I went through my yoga teacher training, when I became acclimated to yoga, which is oftentimes we are identifying with the external world. We're using our eyes and ears to make observations about things that are unfolding in the external world. And in yoga, we talk about this principle of pratyahara. It's the 5th of the 8 limbs of yoga. And it refers to withdrawal of the senses and taking our gaze inside to seeing what's going on inside. So to me, the relationship that fans have with Taylor is already inauthentic and problematic because it's unreal. They don't actually have a relationship with her. They have a relationship with images. They have a relationship with lyrics. If that is therapeutic, and that's a therapeutic relationship, I think that's wonderful. If you go to the lyricism of Taylor Swift because you can't talk to a friend that you have in real life, yes, I totally resonate with that. There are some friends that I have who I don't share every detail of my life because, one, I don't believe in inundating other people in down vibrational energy. It's just not always necessary for them to carry your burdens. Two, they might not be willing to handle it, or they may not be ready for it, or I may not think that that I can trust them with that information. So if you go to the Taylor Swift lyricism and you cry yourself to sleep, or you eat some chocolates, and you did that instead of cutting yourself, or instead of emotionally vomiting on another, person, or, instead of psychically or verbally annihilating another person, if she is a safe space for you, the place that you go to instead of harming other people, then I think that that's somewhat healthy. But I don't think that a relationship that an individual has with an image and organizing their reality around that image rather than the individual, I don't think that can be healthy. And again, to me, as a radical feminist, and having chosen feminism, and having chosen radical feminism because of finally resonating with the reality that we have to be in reality, this ongoing obsession with the unreal, the image of Taylor Swift, the icons, the lifestyle that she leads, which is just profoundly disconnected from the type of life that the majority of her fans lead, is not healthy. And again, this gets back to the assessment that I made in the answer to my previous question. If you're still moving towards feeding into the system as opposed to creating an alternative system where we could actually, as women, have healthy relationships with other women, and we could build up friendships, real living friendships with these women, that would be healthy. I think if we're still in a place where we go to an image and icon, then we're still in the realm of the unreal. And again, going back to the reality of subjectivity and constrained free will, and being able to make choices within the cult of domination and male supremacy, which is patriarchy. If that's the choice that an individual chooses to make, to build up this unreal fan base of idolizing Taylor and of making her your safe space, then that's where we are. And it's not ideal.
Thank you so much for that answer, Jocelyn. And thanks to all of you for staying tuned with us. We have 45 live viewers with us right now. Somebody did ask about why there's not a super chat money button, because WLRN doesn't do super chat money buttons. If you'd like to donate, you can come to WLRNmedia.com and click on the donate button, or look at our merch tab. And, Jocelyn, I just want to circle back to what you were saying, and this is where we're at, right? And what we need to do is meet women where they're at. As radical feminist organizers, I truly believe that meeting women where they're at, different women need different things. Different women have different understandings. They're at different stages in their understanding. And to build a movement, we need to bring women in. We need to draw women in. Women are going to Taylor Swift concerts. They are getting an experience out of it that is deep, that is emotionally connective, and they're bonding with one another. How can we, as radical feminist organizers, go to where women are at and help bring them along into the fold of analyzing patriarchy and taking it a few steps further? Pop singer who is a woman, and she is doing self-exploration and feeling things about the patriarchal oppression she's experiencing. How can we get the women who are listening to Taylor Swift to take it a few steps further? And I think meeting women where they are at is key to good organizing. So I just really appreciate what you said, Jocelyn. I'm so thankful you're a part of our team. And now we're going to go to our final question. Is the Taylor Swift phenomenon feminist or not? Why or why not? And we're going to start out with Zinetta, and she is going to answer that question. Thank you, Zinetta, so much for being here. Go ahead.
I like that the question is about whether or not the phenomenon that she's created is feminist rather than her herself. And I do think that the phenomenon is feminist because, like I said earlier, all of her music, all of her videos, everything she does centers women and girls. And it tells women and girls that their voices and their experiences and their likes and their dislikes and everything about them matters in a way that a lot of media just doesn't do. And I think that women get a lot of value from her music and the world that she's created, like KatyJean spoke about. And it really helps a lot of women and girls in a lot of ways to feel more empowered in themselves and in their experiences. And I think that is feminist and very important as well.
Okay, yeah, and that is a good distinction to make between the artist and the phenomenon. And we are going to move along to KatyJean. Is the Taylor Swift phenomenon feminist or not?
I think that it is. I mean, here is a woman who is existing in the patriarchy, and, you know, like the patriarchy is here. Things that we don't have a control over is the fact that the patriarchy is here right now at this point in our lifetime. And Taylor Swift has figured out how to exist within the patriarchy. She has songs like The Man, where she talks about, if I was a man, I'd be the man, where she's, you know, kind of like addressing and unpacking some of those issues with sexism and how women are perceived. She brings women together, gives us an opportunity to think about things from a woman's perspective. She centers women in what she is doing. And whenever we're talking about Taylor Swift, we are centering our conversation on a woman for once. So for all of those reasons, I am glad that Taylor Swift is the one that is so talked about right now, because if we weren't talking about Taylor Swift, we'd be talking about some guy. And so I'm glad that the conversation is on and about Taylor. And I just want to say thank you, Taylor. And thank you, WLRN. Thank you to you, Thistle. But thank you to Taylor if she ever happens to see this, for everything she has helped me with.
Okay, KatyJean, thank you so much. And we are wrapping up. We are doing our final question. And the question is the Taylor Swift phenomenon feminist or not? And now we're going to hear from Emily. Emily, what is your take on that?
So I really strongly believe that feminism in general should really be viewed as an action. It's like an active thing. It's not an identity. I mean, I know we still use it as a word to describe ourselves, to describe our groups, things like that. But I really believe that feminism is an action. And so I think that there are elements of the phenomenon that are very feminist action. Having one thing that really struck me, like KatyJean talked about, and Zinetta talked a little bit about the experience they had going to the concert. Like, I saw multiple social media posts from women that went to these concerts that said that they had this epiphany moment at the experience that they had previously in their life going into these spaces, like had anxiety about being in a crowd. And when the crowd was mostly women, they didn't experience the social anxiety, the crowd anxiety, because they realized they didn't have to be like wary of a man attacking them. And I think that is like a profoundly feminist experience that Taylor is providing women with. You know, they might not be reading lesbian separatist, theory or hanging out with feminists who are separatists. The idea of separatism isn't even a glimmer in their mind, but they had a separatist experience and they walked out going, why did something? It felt different. Why was it different? It was because it was women, because it was a female positive space. And so I think those seeds being planted in women is profoundly feminist. And yeah, I hope that women are using this experience to propel themselves into a more female-centered life. And so, yeah, I hope. But of course, I do, I think that there are also elements that are not helpful to women, the beauty aspect, the plastic surgery, yada, yada. But yeah, maybe I'm just like a half full type of person. I like to focus on the positive and think about these profound moments that young women are having that are in their nature feminist separatism, whether or not they know it.
Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing your views here today on this WLRN live discussion. Last, we've got Jocelyn, who's also a part of the WLRN collective, and she's going to weigh in on whether the Taylor Swift phenomenon is feminist or not. And then we're going to sign off. Jocelyn, go ahead.
Right. So my thought is, and I come back to the brilliant anthology Female Erasure, and one of the first essays in the text, or near the beginning of that amazing anthology, which was about clarifying terms. And in that context, it was sex and gender. And the writer wrote something along the lines of, first, let's be specific about what we mean when we say sex and what we mean when we say gender, because if we don't obtain clarification there, the conversation will not be meaningful or productive. It's the same concept for me when we talk about whether someone is feminist or not. So first, what do we think feminist is? In the mainstream, mainstream feminism, liberal feminism, etc., it's, very ambiguous, amorphous concepts like men and women are equal. And then when you try to delve deeper and get into, well, what is equal? Why should women want to be equal, etc., oftentimes the conversations fall apart and collapse. To me, as a radical feminist, the definition that many of us have agreed on for our feminism, which is radical feminism, is the liberation of women and girls from men and boys. That's distinct from liberal feminism, which is essentially about working with the oppressor to gain more rights under patriarchy, so women can either act like men and be more, and that's a hypersimplification, but women can either take on toxic traits associated with men to share power with them. They can take on toxic femininity traits, essentialist traits that are considered to be feminine, to obtain social privilege under patriarchy, or you can get out because you don't belong and you're not included. So those are some of the options and the ways that people are thinking about it. But to radical feminism, what we are trying to do is liberate women and girls from men and boys. We're not trying to share power with men. We are not trying to participate in heteropatriarchy. As one amazing radical feminist said, we are repeatedly and intentionally disloyal to the patriarchy in any way, shape, or form. So does Taylor Swift conform to the tenets of radical feminism? No, she is not. She is not a radical feminist. I think that she is a liberal feminist. And I'm not saying that disparagingly. I'm saying it because it is what it is. Liberal feminists tend to work with men. They participate in heteropatriarchy and in heterosexual relationships. They promote those relationships. They do not problematize those relationships in any type of profound or meaningful way. They might complain about something that their boyfriend did, but they go on as if this is a natural order of things and what else will we do? And then they donate these sums of money to other people in power, and then they continue to share privilege with the oppressor, with men. That's what liberal feminism for the most part is about. And it pats itself on the back and it says that it got the job done while women and girls continue to be raped and murdered because of the relationality that they have with men under heteropatriarchy. So is Taylor Swift feminist or not? No, she is not feminist. Do I think that Taylor Swift is on the end of the spectrum of women hating? No, I don't think that she hates women. I don't think she's one of these women who thinks that men are superior to women, as some, women are male apologists. This is the way things are because men are better and we just need to accept it. I agree with Emily that ultimately she's getting conversations going and she's causing women to think about what it means to them to be a woman under patriarchy. She's causing women who go to almost exclusively all female concerts to think, wow, when I come out here, I'm not scared. Unlike times when I share space with men, when I fear for my life, or I'm subjected to sexual harassment, or I'm constantly made to feel like I'm an inferior, I actually feel free. And then they can start to ask questions like, wow, well, what was it about it that spaces like that, female spaces like this, Mitch Fest, were so freeing, so powerful for women that men had to take them away? Maybe they'll start to ask those questions, and maybe that will start to open doors for conversations about the power of female solidarity and why it's such a threat to the patriarchy. So I think that what's important to remember about Taylor Swift is that she is generating these conversations, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing for her not to be feminist. She's choosing to walk the path that most women under patriarchy do. She's continuing to be a heterosexual woman. She's continuing to prop up the patriarchy with the plethora of the decisions that she makes. And as with most women under the patriarchy, she's choosing to contend. She successfully filed and won a sexual harassment lawsuit against a man who touched her buttocks against her will. That's saying something to women and girls around the world about female autonomy and female bodily integrity. So, as with most women under patriarchy, we choose our battles. Most not women choose to participate in, relationships with men. And we see the horrific results that result from, cohabitating with men and going along with that. And then many women see some of the social privilege that they get from that, and they say that's a wonderful result. So in conclusion, no. She is not a feminist, and yes, she is causing many people to have very meaningful conversations and internal monologues about womanhood, patriarchy, and female solidarity.
You are listening to WLRN.
Sheila Jeffreys writes in the areas of sexual politics, international gender politics, and lesbian and gay politics. She has written 10 books on the history and politics of sexuality. Originally from the UK, Sheila moved to Melbourne in 1991 to take up a position at the University of Melbourne. She retired back to the UK in 2015. She has been actively involved in feminist and lesbian feminist politics, particularly around the issue of sexual violence since 1973. Without further ado, let's welcome Sheila Jeffreys with her presentation on the pornification of pop singers and where Swift fits. Welcome, Sheila.
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is how Taylor Swift fits into the pornification of women's role in the pop music industry. Okay, now you will notice that she has few clothes on. She's really in her knickers. And you will be aware, of course, that male pop stars do not perform in their knickers. So there's an extraordinary difference between her and the way that male singers perform, and indeed many other women singers. So she has made the choice to wear this kind of costume. And she is, as Thistle said, promoted as pro-feminist and as a good role model for girls. And she's indeed hugely popular with young girls. And so I'm interested in what these young girls would be learning from her, particularly in relation to her costume. So it may be that many young women just assume that the way she is dressed is normal for female pop singers. But of course it isn't. In relation to female singers, there's been a convergence between the sex industry and the popular music industry in the 20th century. It's often hard to separate them because women in entertainment have often been under pressure to be prostituted. It isn't a problem for men, of course, because they can concentrate on their singing and their talents without having to worry that they would be seen as prostitutes or to have to wear titillating costume. So in that sense, women have two jobs, the perfect sex industry figure as well as singing. Now today, men can view women semi-naked or simulating nakedness by attending a pop concert. Female artists may appear in imitation skin costumes, such as Lizzo and her dancers wear on stage, at all major venues and on the television. And this is not remarked. Nobody says, isn't this strange? Male singers are not semi-naked. They're usually fully clothed. There is for them no crossover with the sex industry. Now, once upon a time, men would have had to go to special premises to see naked women. Showgirls, as in places like the Folies Bergère in Paris, were not generally naked. Even so, even though that establishment existed simply to titillate and entertain men, at the Folies Bergère they probably have the entirety of their legs being shown, but the rest of their bodies would be swathed in various kinds of material. So around the top of Taylor's legs here, there would be some kind of chiffony material or something of some kind. So it's unusual to see much more of them than that. Now, can we have the next slide, please, Emily? Thank you. Now, this is an image from the Folie Bergère. It's a woman dressed up, supposedly as if she's delivering the post, but she is doing so mostly naked. In fact, she is similarly naked to Swift. She's got a bodysuit on. This is not a Mugler bodysuit, but it is a bodysuit. Now, the interesting thing is that this postwoman would be seen as being in the sex industry, whereas Taylor Swift is not seen as being in the sex industry. This image is probably from around the 1890s. Now, women were not permitted at this time to be naked. Can we have the next slide, please, Emily? This is a naked woman, and this is from the first decade of the 20th century. But this woman has to be still. She is in what were called tableaux vivants, meaning living pictures. And it was possible for women to be naked if they were completely still and didn't move. And that lasted pretty much up till the sort of 1960s. There were no strip joints and naked women dancing or anything like that men could go and see. So this is what men went to go and see and be excited. And this photo is of a German woman called Olga Desmond. She appeared naked but immobile in countries across Europe. These performances were to titillate men, and audience are likely to have been mostly, if not entirely, men at music halls and show palaces at this time. It wasn't respectable for middle-class women to attend because the venues were frequented by prostituted women touting for hire, so they were very much seen as connected with the sex industry. And of course, they were entertainment palaces for men, sexual entertainment palaces for men. Now, when I was young and interested in pop music in the 1960s, the dress of women singers was reasonably modest. Could we have the next slide, please, Emily? None of them performed in their knickers, even though sometimes skirts were quite short. In particular, the extraordinarily talented Black women singers of that time were generally fairly modest in their dress. And this slide shows the extraordinary Diana Ross with her singers, the Supremes. And this one shows Dionne Warwick. And as you can see, they are very well covered. There is no hint of their naked bodies here. Now, there were no publicly available strip clubs until late in the 20th century. The porn revolution, as part of the so-called sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s, changed everything. As the industry grew and diversified, from magazines to videotape to online, the values of pornography, women as naked sex objects for sexual use by men, began to have more and more influence on culture in general, but particularly on the music industry. And I've written about in my book on beauty and misogyny, about the pornification of many areas of culture, and I call it porno chic, particularly in relation to the fashion industry, but also these effects were certainly on the music industry. So we see the beginning of a change with the burgeoning of the sex industry, particularly pornography, at this time. So there becomes less and less distinction between popular music and pornography. By the 1990s, the pornography revolution was so advanced that the sex industry and male consumers themselves were demanding live pornography, which means, of course, strip or erotic dancing, as it is euphemistically called. In the mid-90s, there was an explosion of what were called gentlemen's clubs in the US and in the UK and in Australia. And in these clubs, women danced naked, and they also writhed on men's laps, and more explicitly sexual acts took place and take place in back rooms. So there is generally prostitution in these clubs, though there's not supposed to be so. And in the US in particular, there are thousands and thousands of women working for very little and extraordinarily exploited in these clubs. Now, the strip clubs, there was a gradual, there was a boom, there was a huge boom, immediate boom in strip clubs from the late 90s onwards. The strip clubs and the increasing influence on culture of the sex industry generally led to a sexualization of dance clubs and pop culture as those values gradually got spread. And so as each new stage in the sexualization of women in pop takes place, the performers are always said to be empowering women. And of course, in the late 80s and the early 90s, Madonna took the pornification to new lows in her sex album, for instance, her sex book and her erotica album, rather. So can we have slide 6? So this is Madonna in 1990, and it's in her costume, her famous costume by Jean-Paul Gaultier with the comical bra here. Now she's obviously extremely sexualized here, and I think she'd do quite well in the Folies Bergère and other sex entertainment establishments. But in the music industry, this is a little bit shocking. She really very obviously pornographized herself. For instance, her book that she did as a coffee table book at this time, I have it, is called Sex. So, I mean, she wasn't trying to be subtle about this. She wanted to be sex industry in the music industry. Can we have slide 7? And this is her in 1993 doing sort of sexual acts in her performance. And this is after the release of the erotica album and the sex coffee table book. These days, though, it's particularly likely to be Black women singers who will be extremely pornographized, such as Lizzo, such as Cardi B. And there's been a merger. Parts of the pop music industry are really completely merged now with the pornography and sex industry. In 2020, Cardi B released a song she composed called Wet Ass Pussy, and it was proclaimed as empowering to women because it talked about sexual practice. Each new stage of pornification and sexualization is always called empowering to women. That's something we must get used to. Of course, it isn't, because a lot of women do not want to be involved with or associated with the sex industry. In fact, the song called women whores, and it references porn throughout, talking about enjoying pain and whips and leashes, for instance. In one section, she says, "I'm a freak, bitch, handcuffs, leashes," and so on. Can we have the next slide? So this is the first. It's the chorus. Whores in this house, there's some whores in this house, there's some whores in this house, there's some whores in this house. Hole up. I said certified freak, etc., etc. Wet ass pussy. So this is obviously sex industry, unless we want to pretend that the word whore doesn't relate to the sex industry, and of course it does. It's a word for prostitution. Can we have the next slide? And yes, if we look underneath here, we've got spit in my mouth. Now, spitting in a woman's mouth is a trope of pornography. Men spit in women's mouths in pornography. So the references are very clear. This is a song about pornography and about prostitution, but it's seen as pop music, I believe now. These two women who are involved with it, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, are rappers. So we have got merger rather than convergence at this point. Now, male singers, of course, are able to make money and get good careers without being sexualized. Can I have the next slide? Okay. Now this, you will see this man is not sexualized in his costume. He is the UK male singer Ed Sheeran. He fills stadiums. He's pretty successful. I don't know if he's a billionaire like Taylor. And it needs to be said that Taylor Swift has enough money. Her father's a stockbroker. She's a billionaire, not to appear in her knickers, but she chooses to appear in her knickers. So this man, I think, doesn't make quite as much money. I don't think wearing his knickers would actually make him any more money, to be honest. Now, he looks as if he's just got out of bed, and the look is completely deliberate. And that's supposed to be his attraction, I guess, that he looks as if he just absolutely cannot be bothered. So there couldn't be a clearer contrast between the pornification of women like Swift and the male entitlement of Sheeran. I'm not saying that all male singers look as dreadful as this, but they don't appear unclothed. There are quite a few women pop singers as well who refuse to be pornified, and I'm quite sure that we can think of someone that everybody listening to this can think of them, but we don't really have time to go in for that now. So those women are indeed role models for girls because, of course, women have the right to careers without selling their bodies, without having to be part of the sex industry. Men have that right, and women have that right. So when we're talking about role models for girls, what we need are role models that show girls they can be singers and they can do all kinds of things without selling their bodies. And I think that's what we really should be working for.
It's too bad that these images are being put out there that do pornify. It's the whole culture's been so pornified since the 1980s and 1990s. It's like, I feel that we all are just so, it's just difficult. And
well,
so
people think that Taylor Swift is mild, nothing pornographic about her. She's just normal for a pop singer. That's how inured people have become to the sexualization of the industry.
Feminist analysis can be applied to all of society and looking at patriarchy. And I think that that's what we're doing when we analyze Taylor Swift as a woman living in a patriarchal society that's been highly pornified. You know, she grew up in it. Like, she didn't create it. She grew up in it. And, you know, and so how do we reach young women and bring them in as feminists, Sheila?
Well, I mean, that's a question not really just for me, but for all feminists in a movement. I mean, I taught young women in Melbourne University for 25 years. They loved my courses, and that was wonderful. I had access to thousands of young women. That was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved it. So obviously, I am able to talk to young women, and that's terrific. But otherwise, young women have to find us. I mean, the interesting thing is in the 1970s, we were all young women. The women who created the women's liberation movement were all in our 20s, right? And we were all absolutely furious, and we created an extraordinary movement. But now the young have been very much sort of stolen from feminism and turned away from us. And so feminism is now being created by women who are a bit older. But we can't sort of go out and tout for hire, as it were, for young women. The women will find us as long as what we're saying is absolutely relevant, as I think that this discussion is, and all discussions of beauty practices, for instance, are.
Yeah, I mean, and she also has a lot of political sway, and you know, because of social media and because of she's very powerful, almost like a politician or royalty, which I don't know. I mean, people do. You say that Madonna had that much influence. I don't know. It was such a different time. Like, we didn't have social media then, like we do now, and now we can see the fandom very clearly, you know, and you can literally see like thousands, tens of thousands of women making videos, you know, and talking to each other. And I think that changes how we organize ourselves, like the way media is distributed to a certain extent. That begs that question, you know?
I don't know. I mean, what I want is a culture of women that is revolutionary and about overthrowing patriarchy. And I don't think young girls sitting together and making themselves bracelets is going to do that. I think that's a culture of the oppressed, struggling to survive. We know young girls cannot bear to be even growing up to be young women now. We know that because of the huge rate of young women trying to become boys and men, cutting up their bodies to do so. There's a horrifying culture out there for young girls. And I don't think that Taylor Swift is going to be a huge help. I would like women who are truly revolutionary and are clothed and are saying revolutionary things out there also singing. That would be good.
Absolutely, Sheila. Well, if you could organize a dance party, an ideal dance party for women. Who would be on the list for the DJ?
Okay, well, when I do dance, and I do sometimes, around my kitchen in the evening, the music I put on are, of course, Alison Moyet, Angelique Kidjo, and Cesaria Evora. Wonderful, wonderful women singers, and powerful. Yes, I don't think it would be Taylor Swift.
No. Well, I would love to get those names at some point. If you could email those 3 names so that we can remember them. I'd like to get those recommendations from the legendary Sheila Jeffreys, appearing today on WLRN's live airwaves. Thank you so much, Sheila. I don't think there are any other questions. Emily, are there? So, Sheila, thank you, and I'll bid you farewell. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye-bye. Lierre Keith is the author of 7 books, including The Vegetarian Myth, Food Justice and Sustainability, a work called The Most Important Ecological Book of This Generation. She is co-author with Derek Jensen and Max Wilbert of Bright Green Lies, How the Environmental Movement Lost Its Way and What We Can Do About It. She is the founder of WOLF, Women's Liberation Front, a nonprofit that's suing the state of California on behalf of women forced to share prison cells with men. She lives in the Redwoods with an enormous pack of enormous dogs. Welcome, Lierre.
Great. Maybe just go ahead and start with the slides. So I just put together a brief presentation. I think a lot of people are confused. They have no idea who Taylor Swift is. Why does this matter? Why is she so popular all of a sudden? What does all this mean? Why does anybody like her? Why does anybody hate her? And there's a lot of very strong emotions about this. So I have been a fan for a while. So I dug a little more kind of into her background. Just to make sure I had all the facts right. And even I found things that I didn't know about. And so I'm just going to give you this sort of brief, what I think is important about her life. So she wanted to be a musician her whole life. She got her first guitar when she was really young and loved playing music. And her parents were very, very supportive. So when she was 14, she really, really wanted to be a country. That was her thing, was country music. So they moved to Nashville to help her. Which is really nice when you have parents that support you. Not everybody gets that. So that yay for her parents. So they moved to Nashville and she started singing, doing openings for other groups and, open mic stuff. And there's all kinds of cute pictures of her very young with her guitar, just, on her own, being a singer. And it's very sweet. But when she was 15, she signed her first contract, which is that's pretty unusual. And the first album was called Taylor Swift, and her first hit was Tim McGraw. So she became the first female country music artist to write or co-write every track on a U.S. platinum certified debut album, which that was the Taylor Swift album. And she got multiple accolades for that first album. So it's this list of awards that she won. And she was only 15 years old. And she was one of the recipients of the Nashville Songwriters Association Artist of the Year in 2007. And she was one of the youngest people ever to be given that title. Anyway, on and on and on, all these different things that she got, including the Best New Artist. And she was at the 50th Annual Grammy Awards and all of this. So, so show me the slide that's Kanye West. Can you get to that one? Here we go. In 2009, her song "You Belong with Me" won the Best Female Video at the MTV Music Awards, and her acceptance speech was famously interrupted by Kanye West. He jumped up on stage and he took the mic from her, and he said that Beyonce should have won, not her. And it was pretty horrible. Millions of people are watching this live. She's still just a teenager at this point. And you can see her just standing there kind of in horror. She has no idea what to do. It's not like anybody can give you the playbook on how to behave when, a man brutally interrupts you like this. And the audience is booing, but she doesn't know what it means. Are they booing him? Are they booing me? And so she just sort of keeps her control and she just walks off stage. She just doesn't know what to do. And then she's interviewed later and she still keeps her calm, which I think says a lot for her. I don't know that I could have been as calm as she was. I will say in Beyonce's favor that when it was her turn to be on stage, she invited Taylor Swift back on and let her finish her acceptance speech, which I think shows a lot of grace and maturity for Beyonce as well. So good on Beyonce for having some solidarity there. That same year, she hosted Saturday Night Live, and she was the first host ever to write her own opening monologue. Just saying, that's an incredible thing to do. I would not be able to do that. And also in 2009, it ends up not being a great year for Taylor. She was groomed into a relationship with a much older man. So that was John Mayer, who was 32 at the time. And there'll be more on him in a minute. Okay, next slide. Her musical success continued, and with each album she puts out, and she's incredibly prolific. She clearly is somebody who works really hard at her music. She keeps getting more and more awards. And her main audience is teenage girls. This was the first song that I actually paid attention to, and it's called Mean, and it's a really good song about the dynamics of abuse. So this is just one of the verses, but you with your switching sides and your wildfire lies and your humiliation, you've pointed out my flaws again, as if I don't already see them. I walk with my head down, trying to block you out, 'cause I'll never impress you. I just want to feel okay again. And then the refrain, someday I'll be big enough that you can't hit me, and all you're ever going to be is mean. And it's a great song because it really describes verse by verse the dynamics of being with somebody like this, who gaslights you, who twists everything. You know, you don't know which way is up and which way is down by the end of it. But she's triumphant in this song. It's not an awful song of, gloom and doom and I'm never going to get out of this alive. It's, I'm going to get out of this and you're still going to be mean. And I really like when I paid attention to this song, I was like, I really like that the teenage girls of America are listening to this compared to what else is on the radio. I thought this was like actually kind of wholesome and definitely, could give some girls some power. So this was when I started to become a little bit of a Swiftie. Okay, so next slide. Then she has two songs about John Mayer, who's this older man who groomed her. And this is the refrain from the song. Dear John, I see it all now that you're gone. Don't you think I was too young to be messed with? The girl in the dress cried the whole way home. And this is just incredibly poignant. The whole song is very, it's just a pierce to the heart that she clearly was exploited by this man. And way too young. She was still just a teenager. And I think a lot of us have had similar experiences. We are the girl who cries the whole way home after, some level of violation has happened to us. And she is giving voice to these girls. It's just one of the reasons that they love her, is that they see their own experiences, some of which are really horrible and quite painful. They feel seen and heard and understood. There's a lot of her songs that are just sort of, friendly pop songs, just kind of silly stuff that is on the radio and whatever. I'm not terribly interested in that, but doing a deeper dive into her music, you find these kinds of songs as well that are really about much more serious things. So, okay, next slide. This is probably my favorite song by her. This is also about that same guy, that John Mayer. It's called Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda. And this is just one of the verses. And if I was some paint, did it splatter on a promising grown man? And if I was a child, did it matter if you got to wash your hands? And then the refrain, I miss who I used to be. The tomb won't close. Stained glass windows in my mind. I regret you all the time. I can't let this go. I fight with you in my sleep. The wound won't close. I keep on waiting for a sign. I regret you all the time. And then probably the best line, living for the thrill of hitting you where it hurts. Give me back my girlhood. It was mine first. And I just think that's brilliant. I think it's just very, very moving to me. I've listened to this song like 1,000 times. She's just right on. This is what it's like to be, violated in this way. It's give me back my girlhood. It was mine first. It's just a brilliant line. So, okay, next. So she's also had a series of stalkers. It wasn't even just, as bad as it was. It's not even just the one quote relationship. She just seems to be plagued by these horrible men. And this is what happens when women are in the public eye. So this one guy sent her over 40 letters. They get more and more violent and threatening as time goes on. He was found guilty, but at the end of the article, oh, what do you know? There's a series of other articles about all her other stalkers. This one here about knife, rope, and ammunition. I mean, do we even want to let our imaginations roam into what this man was planning for her? It's just absolutely vile. One time she came home and there was a man in her house, in her bed, waiting for her. So she's been seriously stalked and really terrorized by this. And I know, the level of stuff that, I will ever have done to me is, I mean, she's order of magnitude more famous than anybody listening to this will ever even imagine being, right? But all you have to do is be a woman in the public eye. And, the kinds of ways that I've been stalked, it's the thing that has given me the most kind of sort of relief about it is I read this thing once about how every single woman who is a newscaster, so those people who read the news on the TV at night, the stalking rates for women who have that job is 100%. So all you have to do is be a woman in the public eye and men will come at you. They will obsess on you, they will hate you, they will try to hurt you. And that's horrifying, but it makes me know that I'm not alone. And Thistle, I know what you've been through in Madison, so I know you can relate to this. They've been to your house, they've been to your garden, they leave horrible messages, and it's really scary. And nobody takes it seriously, and it's really hard. So that's one of the reasons I have enormous dogs. It makes me feel a lot better. But anyway, she's been through the stalking, and it is a horrible feeling to know that they know where you live and that they mean it. So all of this comes to a point, but indeed, she's been through an awful lot. Okay, next slide. At her concerts, they have special facial recognition software so that they can try to weed out some of the more well-known stalkers. But, here's this line about, imagine that you're so famous and so harassed that you'd need technology that is specifically programmed and installed to identify the lunatics that want to kill you. Well, I think some of us know about those lunatics because we've been through it too. So she's having an experience that a lot of women can identify with. 1 in 11 women is stalked in America right now. And it is absolutely terrifying, and it's so rare that you can get anybody to do anything about it. So, I mean, and even in our political work, I mean, we know how Trantifa, whatever we want to call them, they turn up all the time at events that feminists are going to do. They put up wanted posters of me, where they take photographs of my face and they put them all around the area, and they encourage people to assault us. So, anyway, those are the stalkers. Okay, next, up to the next slide. And then in 2013, she was sexually assaulted by this man, who's a DJ, David Mueller, at a pre-concert event. So this is literally a photo of the assault. He reached up under her skirt and grabbed her ass. And then he was fired by the radio station because she was public about it. She immediately complained to security. They made him leave. And then the radio station did their own investigation and they saw that she was telling the truth and he was fired. So 2 years later, in 2015, he sued her for $3 million in, quote, lost income, and said that she had destroyed his reputation and that she owed him $3 million for this. So she immediately countersued him for assault and battery for $1. And she demanded a jury trial because she wanted to be heard. She was not going to settle this out of court. She wanted this to be made public. And whatever damages she was awarded, she promised she would donate them to groups that were trying to help stop violence against women. So it takes a few years for the trial to actually happen. As you know, these things can take a while. So that's on hold while all of that kind of works its way through the court. And in the meantime, Kanye West pops back up. So 2016, he releases a song called Famous. And the lyrics are, I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex. Why? I made that bitch famous. And then he has entire stadiums of his fans chanting, fuck Taylor Swift. She's done nothing to this man. And she gets this level of hate, that level of public hate, which I just find chilling, that you could get entire stadiums of people to chant that, toward this young woman who's just done nothing to anybody. He also put out a music video, which was even worse than the lyrics. It has a very realistic model of Taylor Swift naked in this giant bed with a bunch of other naked people. He did withdraw the video, but you can still find it. And it was basically revenge porn. Taylor Swift called it that. She called it a revenge porn music video, which strips my body naked. So she clearly understood that this was a sexual threat, a sexual insult intended to humiliate her. So that's what you do. You make a woman into porn if you really want to hurt her. And that's what he did to her. So, okay, next slide. So in 2017, she finally gets her day in court against David Mueller, and she was amazing. You should find the transcript and read the whole thing, because any of you who have read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, it was like that court scene. She had to testify for an hour against him, and she never lost it. So when his attorney tried to claim that her skirt did not appear to be ruffled at the front in the photo, she said, "Because my ass is located at the back of my body." And then asked by his lawyers if he had groped her more than once, she replied, "Other than grabbing my ass against my will, under my skirt, and refusing to let go, he did not otherwise touch me inappropriately." She just kept this up for an hour. It was completely amazing. Okay, next slide. And she said, "I'm not going to allow your client to make me feel like it is anyway my fault, because it isn't. I'm being blamed for the unfortunate events of his life that are a product of his decisions, not mine." Next slide. She said, "I will be making donations in the near future to multiple organizations that help sexual assault victims defend themselves." So in a statement, she promised to help those whose voices should also be heard, and acknowledged the privileged position she was in by being able to shoulder the, quote, enormous cost of defending herself. And she has talked very publicly about, she had 7 eyewitnesses and an actual photograph of the assault. And it was still an absolutely harrowing experience to be up on that stand and try to explain what had happened to her and how humiliating it was. And she knows that if she didn't have good money and some support, that she never would have been able to do it. And she did it for all of us. That's why she was willing to undergo it. And this is really fun. Across the street, there's a website called Craftsy, which is apparently some kind of a crafting and design website. And they're right across the street from the courthouse. They've got these big windows. It's this big office building. So it's these, floor to ceiling windows. And they put huge Post-it notes in every window across the front of their office while the trial was going on. So that every day on her way into court, she would see their support. So it was like the names from some of her lyrics and the names from some of her songs, giving her the message that they were on her side. So fearless in big letters. They did Shake It Off. And it's just really fun to have these women encouraging her and supporting her very publicly like that. But she learned the lesson of patriarchy, that no matter what you look like, no matter how much money you have, no matter what kind of fame or privilege, you think you might have some protection, none of it protects you if you're a woman. You're public property. And that man could just do that to her and not even think twice about it, that anything was going to happen to him. And since then, she's donated a huge amount of money to RAINN and also to Marissa Haggerty's group, Joyful Heart, which supports sexual abuse survivors. This is her main gig in life, is to support them. So, okay, next slide. So she explained that, how horrible it was to have to go through this. You don't feel a sense of any victory when you win, because the process is so dehumanizing, is what she said, reflecting about the trial. And this is what made her decide to be political, that up to that point, she had her whole crew, including her family, had really tried to talk her out of ever making anything political in her life. And they used the Dixie Chicks as, look what happened to them when they said one thing about Donald Trump, how they were, it was Bush actually, that they got wrecked. And they're like, just don't be political. You're a singer. You don't need to do anything political. But after these experiences, she just said she couldn't stay silent anymore. And there was this woman who's apparently the senator from her state, and she had said that she was not going to support the Violence Against Women Act. And Taylor Swift was horrified that somebody would decide not to support something so basic for women. It's pretty much what the federal legislation that we have in the United States, for those of you who are from other countries, has to be reauthorized every once in a while, and it needs funding for it to actually mean anything. And here's a woman saying, "Oh, I'm not going to, if I'm elected, I'm not going to support it." And that was what got Taylor Swift to decide that she was going to start to make political statements. Was she was completely horrified that another woman especially would not support women who are going through this. She thought it was really awful. So, okay, next slide. Yeah, you don't feel a sense of victory because it's all so awful. Okay, so I've already done this one. Next slide. And then 1 year after the trial, she still can't stop thinking about it. It was such a horrible experience to go through the whole thing. And she says, "Something is different in my life. completely and unchangeably different since the sexual assault trial. And no man in my organization or in my family will ever understand what that was like. So a lot of us have been through this. Okay, next slide. And then she said very publicly in an interview in Elle magazine, in case of sexual assault, I believe the victim. Okay, next slide. So in the United States, there's two kinds of copyright. You can have a copyright for the song and the music, the lyrics, and most artists own that. But what you don't own is the recorded version. So that's usually called the master. So that's when you actually go to the studio and they have other artists there and the whole thing is engineered. It's the thing you hear on the radio or the thing you buy on a CD. That's the master. That's called the master. You don't own that if you're the musician. Rarely do you own that. You only own the original lyrics, which are kind of useless to you because the thing that's out there in the world making your name and making you hopefully a living is the master. And the record company generally owns that. So what happens is blah, 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 blah. She, of course, ends up not owning any of the masters. The music is sold on to all these other companies. She has no control over it, and she's trying to get them back, and she's not able to buy them back. They won't let her have them. And there's a lot of details. We don't need to get into the weeds. But the thing that she did that was so amazing is she took Kelly Clarkson's advice here. And she's like, fine, I will just re-record all my own music. You don't get to own me. And she's been doing that. So she's re-recorded 4 of the 6 albums that she doesn't own. And they have sold wildly. Her fans completely understand what she's doing. And they have outsold the originals. And I just think that's amazing. She is the first living artist in 60 years to have 4 albums simultaneously rank in Billboard's top 10 because she's doing this and because her fans want to support her. She went on to do more things like this. She demanded that Apple make sure that artists were compensated fairly during their free trials in 2015. And then she went on to boycott Spotify for 3 years. She brought Spotify to its knees. Their royalties at that point, the artists would get like 0.0003 cents. I mean, it's like fractions of a cent was all they were getting. And Taylor Swift was like, it's not fair, and I have power, and I'm going to do something about it. So for 3 years, she removed her entire catalog from Spotify because of the low payment. And she got her way. She got them to pay the artist more money. She's incredibly generous, just like J.K. Rowling is with her money. She has given out just a vast fortune to groups that she cares about, including some groups that we don't like. I mean, we're going to talk about this, but in the meantime, a lot of groups that do things about violence against women, that seems to be her main cause. A lot of groups like dog and cat shelters. Every time she does a concert in a town, she gives away like hundreds of thousands of dollars to local homeless shelters. Her crew that is, it's a huge crew of people that have to follow you around when you are a musician like this. I think there's like 100 trucks or 50 trucks or something just for the equipment and whatnot. And she gives them all these huge bonuses, $100,000 bonuses. Her crew has been with her from the beginning. It's the same people. They don't leave because she's so nice and so generous. She's just adored by her people. And that is really rare. Like a lot of musicians, you hear about how horrible they are to their crew and, what prima donnas they all are. And you don't generally hear good things, or they're like drug addicts and stuff. And it's just really hard to deal with them. But her crew, they have not a bad word to say about her. They all really, they just think she's wonderful. So she's very, very generous. Okay, the next bad thing, let's have it. Next slide. So then this year, like she hasn't had enough. The deep fake porn came out about her. So these horrible porn, they look like her, they're not her, they're generated by AI. And some of them were extremely violent in nature. They spread everywhere across the internet. Of course, they started on 4chan. Where does this stuff ever start? One of them was seen 47 million times before she managed to get it removed. This is bad, and she knows how it's clearly very traumatizing. This is a quote from this article. The fact that it is not really her body does not diminish the seriousness. Research shows that the pornification of non-risque photos using Photoshop or AI can be just as harmful to the person depicted. The intent behind these images is not simply sexual. The degradation and humiliation of the victim is an equally desired outcome. So this is what she's going through now. Okay, next slide. She's furious about it. She says the door needs to be shut on this, and that every woman has a right to be furious over abusive images. Okay, next slide. And things are happening on the legal front at the federal level. So far, no one's been able to do much about this, but because of what she's been through, there are federal legislators that are trying to do something to stop this. There's a new bill that's been announced, the Defiance Act. It's trying to make it illegal to do this to people, and that the victims could sue the creators of the deepfakes. So if you quote, recklessly disregarded the victim, if the victim did not consent, and it turns out 96% of deepfake videos are non-consensual pornography. Gosh, what a surprise. The point I really want to make here is that back in the day, we tried to pass the Dworkin-McKinnon, the civil rights ordinance about porn. It was exactly the same thing. All we wanted to do was give victims a foot in the door to try to sue. If you could prove that you were forced into porn or hurt because of porn, that you would have some kind of standing, some kind of cause of action. And this is exactly what's happening now. This is the kind of legislation they're trying to pass about this. And it's because of Taylor Swift. I think that feminists should have their ears wide open at this point to what is going on here. And I love the last line here. No one should ever doubt the power of Swifties to enact change. So there is hope. Okay, next slide. And then we have female friendship. So the young women and the girls who are really into Taylor Swift talk about what an incredible experience it is to go to these concerts. They're clearly getting something out of this that is really profound to them. And I kind of get it, I mean, I remember when I was sort of their age, young teen years, the group that I loved more than anything was Heart because of Ann Wilson. And it's the same phenomenon, right? And, there were things that happened on stage that made me really unhappy and uncomfortable. Some of the costumes they wore, I didn't like. I didn't have a lot of words for it, but I still got so much out of being a Heart fan. And having this role model in Ann Wilson, who had this enormous voice, still has this incredibly huge, beautiful voice. And you could go to these concerts and it was mostly other young women who loved them. And this is what they're getting out of it. Like they feel seen and they feel heard and they are participating in something that is very female centered. And you can go all the way back in human history and you will see some of the very first images we ever drew were images of women dancing in circles and lines. There's no men in these pictures. It's women holding hands and dancing. And I think as long as there have been girls have been doing this. They have been bonding with each other. I think we come with that template, just like we come with a template for the human face, just like we come with a template to learn language. I think girls come with a template to bond with other girls, because life is hard and evolution has prepared us for that hardship. We're going to need each other. You need your mom, you need your sisters, and you need your female friends. We're not going to survive without them. And so since the beginning, this is what we have done, is pledged to each other. And this is the friendship bracelet. So, and it's in that song. When I loved that song because I think it's a really good song. It's like, you can do this is the message of that song. But when I heard that there were these teenage girls running around the concerts, in the parking lot, and then with the piles of bracelets and giving them out and trading them with all the other girls that were there, I just thought that was so wholesome, right, and so sweet, but something that's really I remember from my girlhood, that you need your female friends and that you learn how to bond with other girls because you're going to need those skills throughout your life. So I started making female friendship bracelets as well. I started making them again. And the last year and a half, every time I go to a feminist event, I bring these bracelets. So I make the suffrage bracelets. I do the suffrage colors. And if you come to We the Women in the Pacific Northwest, you better believe I've got a stack of them already made. So give me the last slide. This is my pile of bracelets that I'm bringing. So I think that Taylor Swift has three main messages to girls. John needs to go fuck himself, make the friendship bracelets, and be fearless. And that's why they're into him. So that's what I got.
Okay, thank you so much, Lierre. A question that has been batted around amongst a lot of women who are lesbians, lesbian feminists, or radical feminists, TERFs. I mean, I've seen online people saying you're either a TERF or a Swiftie. You cannot be both, right? And I think, women feel very mixed about the Lavender Haze video, the You Need to Calm Down video that features men dressed as women dancing, and Taylor, saying everybody needs to just calm down. This isn't a big deal, this whole trans thing, and also, as we know in the Lavender Haze video, especially lavender being a color that has symbolized lesbianism in a lot of ways in our culture for a long time, how she takes as a lover an actor who is a woman who's had her breasts removed surgically, and they show it in the video, and it's very much, glorified as a way of being sexy and, being in bed with Taylor Swift and pretending to be a man. And, how can we, as feminists, reconcile and enjoy the music after we know that because it's not just the image of that, it's also the money that she's put into Folks, for example, FOLX, an organization that promotes young girls, especially with mutilating surgery.
Hang on, I can look at the dog. Give me 1 second. Go, run, go outside, go. Go.
Doggy time.
Yes, I think that those are very good questions to be asked. I'm going to put all the dogs outside. Go, you giant beast. The dog beast. Okay. I completely understand how everybody feels about this, because it's a hard thing to, we've got some very contradictory things going on here in the person of Taylor Swift. And I just need to say that I am somebody who, for decades loved the Indigo Girls. They were like the soundtrack to my life for like 25 years. I had a bootleg tape before they were famous that somebody gave me in like 1985 or something. Like, that's how far back I went with the Indigo Girls. I saw them at Michigan. I was 10 feet from the stage. It was like, one of the high points of my life. And then the next year, what did they do? They turned on Michigan, and I have not been able to listen to them since. I just can't do it. I've tried, I get 15 seconds in. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm so angry and I feel just disgusted. So that's it. I turn it off. So I get it. If you don't want to listen to Taylor Swift over all of that, the trans stuff, I get it completely. I'm not going to try to talk you around. But for me, what I think is that right now in the culture, this comes as a bundle, and we need to be able to reach through to the women who are still there and show them that you can take that bundle apart. And I say bundle because it's like YouTube is always like, get the Disney bundle. And I don't know what's in the Disney bundle. I'm assuming it's like 12 more channels that I would never watch, so I don't care. But it all just comes as a package, right? So this is like the good person package right now. If you're a good person and you want to care especially about gays and lesbians, and you agree with same-sex marriage and all of that, this is just gay plus. That's all they know. And I've had this discussion so many times. That's why I think this is probably true about Taylor Swift. That for most people, they don't understand that this is something completely different. They think it's part of the same thing because it's LGBTQAI++. So it's gay plus, and that's all they know, right? I think that somebody like Taylor Swift, whose main passion really is violence against women in terms of her political work, I think we could get through to her. I don't know that we could. I think it's worth a try. So from my perspective, the idea is, do we just walk away from people who still believe things that we know are not true and damaging to women? Or do we try to reach them? Because my goal is to build a movement. And I'm not saying everybody has to do this. I'm just saying, for me, I see somebody in Taylor's position and I know what she's thinking, right? It's like all the good liberals. This is what they think, that this is how you be a good person. This is how you be a decent person. Oh, these terrible right-wing bigots are coming after the gays and lesbians, and we only just got gay marriage, and this is horrible, and they need protection, and we need to help them. So, I'm going to help build that barrier to protect these poor, vulnerable people. And the trans got stuck in there. So they just think that this is how you protect the vulnerable gay, lesbian, and sort of these other people. I don't really get it. And that's what it is the good person bundle. And that's what she's doing. So to me, I don't think it's impossible. We've seen so many people peak. J.K. Rowling, once upon a time, did not understand what she understands now. There's a way to get people out of this, but it takes time and it takes some effort.
And I've heard many a Brit say that America needs our own J.K. Rowling, and certainly Taylor Swift fits the bill as far as like an American icon who could be a TERF and could advance the movement to stop violence against girls and women and to further our sex-based rights. You know,
so this is my ultimate plan. I don't know that we're going to get there, but I'm going to tell you. I want 10 minutes with Taylor Swift. Now, it doesn't have to be me. Some radical feminist needs 10 minutes with Taylor Swift. Okay, I don't need to meet famous people. I've met all the famous people I ever want to meet. I don't need. This is not something I need. And I really like her. I don't need to meet her. I don't care. This is not about me. But some radical feminist needs 10 minutes with Taylor Swift.
From across the femisphere
to women worldwide.
To
women worldwide.
Radical feminist media
To break the sound barrier.
Break the sound barrier.
Break the sound barrier.
Break the sound barrier.
Radical feminist media
to break the sound barrier.
This is your grassroots
Community radio station.
This is your radio station.
Women's Liberation Radio News.
This summer, 2024 is hot with feminist conferences and camping events galore all over the U.S. Hi, I'm Ann Menashe, a lesbian radical feminist and a co-coordinator of Feminists in Struggle. We're hosting our first national conference at a beautiful site near San Diego, July 5th through 7th. We've called the conference Our Radical Roots, a women's liberation organizing conference. We will also enjoy good food, swim in the pool, sleep in comfortable beds, experience the wonderful folk music of WLRN's own Thistle and have plenty of time for political discussion and getting to know our sisters face to face as we build our movement and create a just future for women and girls. Our conference will feature feminist historian Max Dashew, Hilla Kerner from Vancouver Rape Relief, a lesbian from the LGB Alliance USA, ERA attorney Wendy Murphy, Amy Ichikawa from Women to Women, which works with women in prison, and many more. So, if you are tired of U.S. patriotism and militarism led by patriarchy every July, join us in San Diego, July 5th to 7th. Let's declare our independence from the patriarchy and its bedfellow, capitalism, and walk hand in hand for women's liberation. You can register for the conference at FIS's website at feministstruggle.org. That's feministstruggle.org.
When Thistle and I were listening to the recording from our first discussion of the Taylor Swift phenomenon, we stopped to laugh when KatyJean says proudly that she can be friends with people she disagrees with. Why is that so funny, Thistle wondered. Because, I said, in our world right now, that is actually a radical stance. The capitalist patriarchal forces that keep the machine running have done an excellent job in the last decade of thoroughly convincing everyone, whether they are on the right or the left, mainstream or radical, that what matters most in our close social circles is ideological purity, that we shouldn't tolerate anyone who disagrees with us on serious issues in our workplace, in our neighborhood, in our homes, or in our lives in any form. Many have been convinced on all sides that the best thing they can do for what they believe in is shun and shame and exclude anyone that disagrees with any aspect of their worldview. The reason why it might have sounded so strange or silly for KatyJean to exclaim that she would gladly be friends with someone she disagrees with is because even 10 or 20 years ago, a proclamation like this would be almost unimaginable in its banality. 10 years ago, a statement like that would have been met with the same blasé as someone declaring their love for both cats and dogs. Even some of the most radical feminists have convinced themselves that the best thing they can do to fight the patriarchy is to shun and dismiss and defame other women. Like Taylor Swift says in her song Mad Woman from the album Folklore, women like hunting witches too, doing your dirtiest work for you. How can each of us as radical feminists stop doing the patriarchy's dirty work? I think the revolution begins and ends with our female friendships. Talk to the women in your life. Talk to your family, your coworkers, your friends, about the things that really scare you about living under patriarchal oppression. Listen to women as much as you share your own story with them. And give other women the same curiosity and compassion that you would like them to show you. Share this podcast with the women in your life and use it as a catalyst for conversation. Build those tight bonds of friendship that can sustain and nourish you through your life.
One, two, ready, go. When I told you I'm a warrior, then I learned it from my mom. You said, babe, don't worry, I'll be your steady from now on. And I'm not sure I believe you this early on the ride, but the tide, oh the tide, and with you by my side, I get carried away. I get carried away. The closer I get to you, the more I worry you won't stay. You'll see all my brokenness, then politely wander away. Oh, but your light shines through my window, revealing wreckage in the way. And then the tide, oh the tide, crashes through on this ride, and I get carried away. You carry me away. Please stay. Oh, the waters keep swirling around my house. I'm overcome by the waves. But by some bright, brave miracle, I just might be able to save myself and then come running home to you. We roam the streets, feeling complete, looking for a place to express ourselves. And I know that look in your eye, it's a glimmer of what could be if we try to turf this tide, rising up side by side. Oh, let's get carried away. Let's get carried away. What do you say?
That was my song, The Tide. I wrote it after listening to the album Midnights and reflecting on the love I feel for my girlfriend and for our movement. If you listen closely, you hear my cat at the beginning, who was shut out of the studio and feeling forlorn. Let's get carried away, sisters, and turf each of our respective neighborhoods, town halls, and houses of Congress. We can do it. We've come this far, and there's no turning back. 8 years ago, I started WLRN to break the sound barrier women are blocked by under the status quo rule of men. Since then, we have been home to over 30 different volunteer women who have come on board to contribute to the infrastructure and the glue that binds us together as a collective of media activist women. Thank you, Sekhmet, Jenna, Aurora, Emily, Jocelyn, April, Margaret, and Mary, our current WLRN team, for making our community-powered radio station a force to contend with in this battle for free speech for women. Speaking of, here's a PSA sent to WLRN by Joey Bright, a lesbian feminist listener from the Bay Area. She's helping to promote Kelly J. Keen's Let Women Speak event in Tulsa, Oklahoma, May 17th. Oh, that's coming up. Take a listen.
Hi, my name is Allie Snyder, and I'm excited to share an incredible opportunity for American women and the men who care. Kelly J. Keen is coming to the U.S. and hosting her Let Women Speak event in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Friday, May 17th. This is her only event in the U.S. this year, so you don't want to miss it. Let Women Speak is a globally recognized women's rights organization that fosters a community in which all women feel empowered to speak. Anyone can turn up to Kelly J's events, and anyone can speak, but men are asked to wait until the end. For more information regarding the event and to register your interest in attending, visit letwomenspeak.org/events. We hope to see you there.
It's hard to believe 8 years have already passed since WLRN started this podcast. I've been a part of the collective for most of that time, having joined not long after becoming a radical feminist. So much has happened in the world, to women, in the lives of WLRN's members since we started. Some things have changed for the better, others for the worse. WLRN members have come and gone. Much of female existence and feminist struggle is exactly the same as it was when our first podcast episode came out. Some of it is different. No matter what, we're still here. Women, feminists, and this media collective. Everything else aside, that's remarkable. That we have stayed committed to doing this work, putting in the time and effort for free, while attending to our other responsibilities is impressive. It's not always easy, but when you care about something as much as we care about feminism, you don't give up. I think what feminism means to individual women changes over time, as we change and as our lives unfold. If you asked every member of WLRN what the feminist movement means to her, each of us would probably give you a different answer. And maybe not the same answer we would have given at year 1 or year 5, or what we'll give at year 10, 12, or 15. What WLRN means to each of us is probably unique too. Speaking for myself, I can say that I continue to be proud of working with WLRN, and of the other women who have kept it going for almost 100 episodes. This podcast has granted women of different ages, races, sexualities, classes, and feminist positions a platform to speak their mind, to share their experiences and perspectives, pass along their wisdom. We discuss the female experience and women's issues here in a way that hardly any other media organization does. We've released episodes on Black women, Indigenous women, Mexican feminists, lesbians, romantic love, women's spirituality, female athletes, rape culture, motherhood, and so many other topics important to women. And everything we've discussed, we've analyzed from a radical feminist point of view. Whether any of us in the collective ever intended it or not, WLRN will be a resource for feminists and feminist-adjacent women for years to come, even after we release our final episode. I have long said, echoing what radical feminists who have come before me taught, that true feminism was never about changing men. but about changing women. Feminism does change us, but we also change it. Feminism's goals and principles may be constant, but the shape of the movement, what it accomplishes and how it constantly shifts in focus and strategy, is based on the women who actively engage. For a while there, it felt like radical feminism was on life support. Liberalism took over, hit mainstream culture, and became more popular than real feminism had probably ever been. Women and girls got duped on so many issues by liberal patriarchy and pink girl power packaging. We lost ground even while we continued to progress and fight as best we could with faulty consciousness. Ironically, we have the gender identity phenomenon to thank for reviving radical feminism in the 21st century. What's that they say in labor organizing? The bosses are some of the best union organizers because they get workers so riled up. While plenty of liberal women reject transgenderism without ever fully moving into radical feminism, so many women, especially young women, have raised their consciousness into radical feminism within the last decade because of the gender insanity. WLRN has spent a lot of time covering the trans cult, in part because so many women want to talk about it and have dedicated themselves to fighting it. While it's certainly not the only or even the most important feminist issue, it has become the issue of our times, with major negative consequences for women and girls around the world, and mainstream liberal media won't allow anything but unconditional support of it. Even alternative community-based media, such as WORT 89.9 FM in Madison, a public access radio station that banned Thistle in 2015, supports the status quo rule of trans-identified males. Separatist feminist media had to break free of the stronghold Thistle's peers have in her hometown, the stronghold the trans cult has worldwide. WLRN collectively shone through the cracks of that dark hour for journalism to bring women into the fold of our own media, our own analysis, and our own growth. The work WLRN has done covering the trans cult has contributed a lot to the discussion and to feminist consciousness raising for women who know something's wrong with gender identity, but can't see all the way through the smoke on their own. There is no bad way for a woman to discover feminism or to become a feminist, and if the podcast has helped women out there grow into feminist consciousness, we've done good work. It's anybody's guess where this podcast and the radical feminist movement are headed. All I can be certain of is that the feminist struggle is eternal, and that as long as WLRN exists, we'll continue to do what we can to facilitate women's consciousness-raising, movement-making, and connection to each other. Whether you've been listening to us for 8 years or just recently started, thank you. I hope WLRN's content is as valuable to you as making it has been for me and my sister collective members. It's an honor to be a part of your feminist journey. Let's carry on together with pride in our womanhood and in our feminism.
Thanks for listening to WLRN's 97th edition podcast on Taylor Swift. WLRN would like to thank our guests this month for sharing their views. Thank you so much, Zinetta, KatyJean, Jocelyn, Emily, Sheila, and Lierre for speaking with us. Also, I want to give a shout out to Sekhmet and Jenna, who have been with the collective since its first year. Until next time, this is Thistle signing off on another WLRN podcast.
If you like what you are hearing and would like to donate to the cause of feminist community radio, please visit our WordPress site and click on the donate button. Check out our merch tab to get a nice gift in exchange for your donation. And if you are interested in joining our team, we are always looking for new volunteers to conduct interviews, write blog posts, post to our Facebook and other social media pages, and do other tasks to keep us moving forward as a collective of media activist women. Thanks for listening. This is Mary, signing off for now.
And I am Jenna. Thanks for tuning in. I can hardly believe it's been 8 years of women's independent community radio, and I feel blessed to have been part of it since 2016. Next month, we will focus our program on chronic pain and autoimmune disorders as they affect women. If you want to join our team, we are currently looking for a new volunteer video editor / YouTube channel manager. The minimum commitment is 1 video per month using the audio of our podcast and then posting it to our YouTube channel. Our last volunteer in this position, once she got the hang of making the video, spent about 1 hour per month doing this task. No experience is necessary, and we will provide you with the tools and training you need to fulfill this role on our team. Send a letter of interest and resume to info@WLRNmedia.com to apply. Our handcrafted podcasts always come out the first Thursday of the month, so look for it on Thursday, June 6th. If you'd like to receive our newsletter that notifies you when each podcast, music show, and interviews are released, please sign up for our newsletter on the WLRN WordPress site. Stay strong in the struggle, and thanks for listening.
This is Emily signing off on another edition of WLRN's monthly handcrafted podcast. I couldn't be more proud to be a member of the WLRN Collective for this 8th year anniversary. I'm immensely proud of the work we are able to achieve as a collective. Cheers to another 8 years of grassroots radical feminist collective media to break the sound barrier. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Spinster, Overit, and SoundCloud in addition to our WordPress site. Thanks for listening.
This is Jocelyn, signing off on another edition of WLRN's monthly handcrafted podcast. This month, I am reminded that the work that women artists do in the entertainment industry has a deep and salient impact on women and girls. So this month, I invite us to tune into all of the thoughtful commentary produced by the wonderful women of WLRN and our guests as we explore how the work of Taylor Swift impacts the way women and girls think of themselves and each other. Thanks for listening.
And this is Aurora. Our monthly podcasts are always crafted with tender loving care and in solidarity with women worldwide. Thank you for your support. We would love to hear from you, so please do share, like, and comment widely.
But how will we find our way out of this? What is the antidote for the patriarchal kiss? How will we find what needs to be shown? And then after that, where is home? Tell me, where is my home? 'Cause gender hurts.